Okay, we will now call this meeting to order. It is 6:02 p.m. Welcome everyone to the May 19th, 2022 regular meeting of the City of Santa Monica Housing Commission. I want to thank all the commissioners and the public for being here this evening, and I'm looking forward to your full participation. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please state the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we'll move to roll call. Commissioners, after your name is called, please answer. Commissioner Camner.
Present.
Commissioner DeBaca. Commissioner DeBaca. Okay. Commissioner Gomez.
Present.
Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Hilton.
Here.
And Vice Chair Marasco, I am here. So it looks like everyone is here but Commissioner DeBaca. Okay, now we're going to move to
Actually,
item number one.
If I may make a point of privilege regarding the assembly.
Okay.
At the last Housing Commission meeting, Commissioner Gomez inquired about the required number of votes for a motion to pass. Based on my reading of an unclear sentence in the commission bylaws and guidance from Robert's Rules of Order, and without guidance from the staff liaison, I believed it took a majority to pass a motion as long as there was a quorum. I was wrong. After consulting with the city attorney's office, I can confirm that any action taken by the commission requires at least 4 votes in favor of that action in order for it to pass. So there are exceptions with higher requirements. And therefore, and according to the city attorney's office, 2 votes that we took at the March meeting are therefore nullified and would require a new vote to act upon. One of them is already moot, as it regarded communication with the Disabilities Commission that's already taken place, and the other item has been withdrawn. I apologize for my part in the confusion and thank Commissioner Gomez for bringing the discrepancy to our attention. And I look forward to clarifying this and other rules and procedures and improved bylaws and other guidelines in the near future. I'd also like to make an agenda management motion. We have a guest this evening, and I'd like to move to bring items 1D and 4C forward to immediately follow 1A before we continue with the rest of the agenda.
Okay, is there any discussion on this, or do we want to go to a vote?
I think we need a second.
Second the motion.
I'm sorry, second. I'm sorry. Is there a second on this? On Commissioner Gray's motion to move items 9D and 4C ahead of 4A? Sorry.
Lisa.
Yes. I'm sorry. Commissioner Hilton?
Could you state and read the agenda items and explain the reason for the reorder?
Sure. Give me one second. Um, Sorry, forgive me, too many windows. Okay, so agenda item 9D reads discussion and possible action regarding offer by City Council Member De La Torre to facilitate dialogue among commissioners and city staff about Housing Commission concerns and protocols. And City Council Member De La Torre is here with us to join us for that item and has asked that we address this earlier in the agenda. And then 4C just is actually related to that discussion. And so I thought it would make sense for it to follow 9D. But other than that, proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Okay. Is there a second on Commissioner Gray's motion to move these agenda items ahead of 4A?
Second, Teresa.
I'm sorry, who said they second? Okay.
Whoever just spoke, can they identify themselves? There are a lot of phone numbers here without names.
Who's second Commissioner Gray's motion?
I'll
Whoever's
second
it-
the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Is there any discussion about moving these agenda items before 4A, or do you just want to go to a vote?
Vote.
Okay. Anyone? No? All right. Now we'll take a roll call vote. Are you in favor of Commissioner Gray's motion to move agenda items 9D and 4C ahead of 4A? Commissioner Camner,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca, Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So with 6 votes for, 0 against, the motion passes. And now we'll move to agenda item 1, special agenda items, selection of the 1A, selection of the chair of the commission, which would be discussion and possible action regarding election of Housing Commission chair for the term ending July 1st, 2022. And first, I will call for any public comment on item 1A.
So stupid.
Hello?
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 Who's speaking?
Denise Barton?
Ms. Barton,
Yes.
you can go ahead with your comment on 4A.
Okay, thank you. No, I thought it was something that I wasn't on. I thought you were going to 1A first.
We are.
I'm sorry, 1A. So sorry.
Okay. I don't think it's really necessary to do another vote to for a month until July when the next appointments and votes are supposed to come up. So why would you be continuing on with this is the question. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but Richard Hilton's kind of taken this to an extreme point where it's made the commission not look really good. And so I just think that everybody just ought to probably get along. But I think that, you know, Teresa Mosco should stay as the chair of the Housing Commission, until the next choosing of it. Because, like I said, it's just for one more month. And as I said, Richard Hilton really didn't make the Housing Commission look good, and he took it to an extreme level as well, which also reflected bad upon him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Any other comments from the public on 1A?
Yes.
Okay, caller, your name?
David Morris.
Good evening, David Morris. Go ahead.
I would like to recommend that you table this item of appointing a new chair for 1 month. It would be better to table this item now because it's been too much drama and lost time of the commission's work time and the ability for the commission to move forward, including losing one meeting. The object of the commission is to cooperate and to get work done, not engage in selfish attention seeking for personal reasons and making untrue and inflammatory statements against fellow commissioners. It's time to move on to the serious work at hand. Corrupt behavior has no part in this commission's business and must not be allowed. So please table this item until the new appointments be made. This is the will of the people, the residents of Santa Monica, as well as the elected city council officials who agreed that this is the appropriate action and stated so in the last meeting. We need to move on to serious business. We've already lost time of the last month. So please, let's cooperate together and wait till the next appointments. And then everybody can have new appointments according to the vote of the council and so on and so forth. I thank you for considering this and hope that the commissioners can work this out amongst themselves. And I thank the council member, Oscar De La Torre, for joining this meeting to engage in negotiations and help this to go forward in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Are there any other people who want to give public comment on this item?
Yes, this is Olga Zuraska.
Good evening, Olga Zuraska.
I would like to echo what the previous speaker said. I think it makes more sense that the commission would delay the selection of chair until July, which is only 2 meetings away. And in July, it's mandatory that the commission engage in the selection of new leadership. I'm not sure why you would be actually wasting time on the selection of the new chair for effectively for 1 meeting. And should you engage in such a selection, I absolutely object to the selection of Richard Hilton for reasons that I think anyone who's been paying attention is aware of. It's absolutely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zuraska. Are there any other callers for this item? There's no more callers? No one, no more public comment? Okay.
In light of the public comments and the very short time remaining in the fiscal year, I move to postpone the election of chair until July, at which time we'll elect both chair and vice chair, and with Vice Chair Marasco remaining as acting chair for the short time we have left until July. So I move to postpone until July.
Is there a second on Commissioner Gray's motion to table this, the election of chair until July?
Second.
Commissioner Hilton, that is, you second?
Yes.
Thank you. Shall we have a discussion on Commissioner Gray's motion or go to a vote? No discussion? Okay. So now we'll take a roll call vote for the tabling of election of chair until July 2022. Are you in favor of tabling the election of chair until July with the vice chair remaining acting chair for the brief remainder of the fiscal year? Commissioner Camner,
Abstain.
Commissioner DeBaca,
Tabling it until July is, am I correct? Is that what I heard?
yes.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Hamilton, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry. My vote was no. I think we need to have resolution on the chair.
Commissioner Hilton,
Yes.
and the vice chair votes yes. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 1 against, and 1 abstention. The motion passes. We will move to item number 2, consent calendar. We have nothing for consent calendar. Agenda item number 3, study session. There is nothing for study session. And now we're going to move ahead to 9D. Agenda item 9D, which is discussion and possible action regarding offer by City Council Member De La Torre to facilitate dialogue among commissioners and city staff about housing commission concerns and protocols. First, is there any public comment on this item 9D? Any public?
Well, I have a comment. I'm sorry, there's some noise. Hello? Hello?
Go ahead, Mr. Rosca.
Okay, this is Olga Zaraska. I have a comment. I just think it's very important that the city makes a distinction between the role of the staff liaison and the secretary, so that there is no confusion. I've recently noticed that the city manager has been using those terms as synonymous, and I don't believe they are, and I think it causes confusion also for the commissioners. And I also have a question, really, and I'm not sure if there's anyone there who can answer it. It's probably a question for staff members, because I discovered upon watching all the council meetings, I think there was a meeting. It was a meeting from April of last year, that the council voted to actually exempt the housing commission from the motion where commissions were supposed to be meeting every 3 months and without staff assistance. And the reason why the council voted that way was because then Chair Soloff actually advocated before the council for the need for monthly meetings of the commission. He mentioned that the commission only costs the city approximately $40,000 a year to maintain. And there was a question before the council whether the housing commission was adequately staffed, and the city clerk responded that to the best of her knowledge it was. So my question is, what has changed between April of last year and now, where we have been hearing from staff that there is no staff to assist the housing commission? the council meeting I just mentioned to you took place about a year after the budget cuts of 2020. So I'm not sure what has changed since April of 2021 until now. And from the statement by the city clerk that the commission was adequately staffed to the current situation where apparently there is no staff to assist this commission. So those are my questions. Thank you.
You're muted, Vice Chair Marasco. You're muted.
Are there any other public comments on item 9D?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, David Morris, go ahead.
That's correct. In this council meeting that the former speaker just spoke of, the city clerk mentioned the fact that it was presented to her if they had staffing, but it was also asked of her if they had the funding for the staff. And she said that they were funded, that they did have staffing for this position. In these last meetings, the staff has not been available to the commission, and this has been a big issue because this commission needs to take care of the major business at hand, which is serious business about housing in the city of Santa Monica, affordable housing, new projects, new ideas to come, new speakers, and the staff, it's a must that they are present and monitoring and able to answer questions in these future meetings. And in the last council meeting, the clerk, I believe, stated that there would be staff in July. So now we're expected to wait another month or two for the staff to show up that's supposed to have been here all along, and that the money has been paid for and allocated for this work. And the question is, where did that money go to if they haven't been present? And if there was a cutback of commission staffing, why was not the commission notified and the general public notified that the staffing had been cut back? So I think this is a serious issue and a serious question that the staff, which should be there present right now at this meeting, should be able to answer immediately to us. The general public wants to know if there was $40,000, I believe the figure was $43,000, was appointed to staff this commission. Where is that $43,000 gone? And why was the staff not present? And these questions need to be answered immediately. And I'm sure the council would like to have this answer as well. Once again, I'd like to thank Council Member Oscar De La Torre for being present tonight. I know he's a very busy man, has other issues to attend to besides the Housing Commission itself. So thank you, and thank you for your time. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Are there any other public comments on item 9D? No more public comments? Okay, Commissioner Gray.
Thank you. At the last City Council meeting, Council Member Oscar De La Torre generously offered to facilitate discussions among housing commissioners, staff, and others in order to help the Housing Commission run more smoothly and equitably. I'm happy to welcome him to our meeting this evening to begin discussing that now. Councilmember De La Torre, are you here?
I saw him a minute ago.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties, and anyway, I finally got on. So I want to thank you all very much for all the work that you all are doing, and hearing of all the dynamics that have been going on with the Housing Commission, and understanding that there's some real, tensions and conflicts. I mean, I said in the last council meeting, we've had our own conflicts on the city council. Conflict is not bad. It's actually a very good thing, especially with a new group, because we can set expectations. We can set new expectations, and I think what I've been learning and my approach in terms of volunteering to help out the Housing Commission. What I wanted to do today is just see if there was an interest, making sure that everyone's on board with doing a structured mediation. The purpose of the mediation would be for us to understand each other better, like understand sort of our passions, our goals, what are the things that we want to accomplish as commissioners, and then really kind of focus on the agenda. What are the things that we want to focus our work on collectively, right? Because a lot of you are new. Some of you have never served on the commission. I know how it is. My first time on the school board, I really needed a lot of orientation. I didn't receive it, and I want to take personal responsibility because a lot of times we say, well, the city should have done a little bit more orientation with the new commissioners. But yet, I am the city, right? I mean, I'm one member of 7, and we have to take responsibility for providing the commissioners the training to understand roles and responsibilities. But more importantly, to provide a space where people to get to know each other a little better. What's really difficult is that when you don't have a relationship with someone, then we have a difficult time with testing our assumptions, right? And assuming positive intent. And I'm going to repeat that again. In every relationship, it's especially new relationships, we should always feel comfortable with testing our assumptions, meaning, calling each other up and saying, hey, are you trying to do this? Or I heard that you were trying to do that. And also assuming positive intent. And what does that mean? That means that we're thinking that somebody's doing something for all the right reasons versus thinking that somebody's doing something underhandedly or with a personal agenda or an axe to grind. And so without relationship, we can't really test assumptions. And we end up not assuming positive intent because we just lack relationship. And so I wanted to spend some time with all of you collectively to really, take the time to learn about each other a little bit better, and then also define our purpose, and then to set some goals and some new expectations. And I wanted to know really quick if we just can go around, because I want to respect your time. This is not the time to do the actual mediation. This is just the time to give me some feedback. Really quick, just so we can go around one time and everybody sort of tell me what you would expect an outcome to be. Like what would be a couple of outcomes or one outcome at least that you would want to see coming out of a structured mediation or really not so much a mediation, even though we call it that, but it's really just a facilitated dialogue, to understand who we are and what our goals are as commissioners. So really quick, if it's okay, Madam Chair, if we can ask everyone to just give me a little bit of feedback. I have a pen and paper. I'm going to write some notes. And then the follow-up will be that we're going to send out an email to everybody, and I'm going to call everybody personally to find out what day works best. We need 2 hours. So we're going to need about 2 hours from everyone. And I guarantee you that we will start on time and we'll end on time. But I want to know if like a Saturday from 10 to 12 is better or a weekday from like 6 to 8 is better. And we'll talk about that. But right now, we can just get a quick sort of what outcomes do you all want to see coming out of this dialogue that I'll be facilitating.
Okay, Commissioner Kamner, do you want to speak on this?
Yeah, I do. So while I appreciate the intention here from the council member, I'm not sure, are we going to discuss whether we're agreeing to the mediation before we jump into it? And also, while again, I appreciate the sentiment here and this exercise, I have to take issue with what the council member suggested, that the commissioners call each other up to discuss commission issues and intentions. I'm really concerned about the Brown Act implications of that kind of practice. And I think that if there have been ex parte communications with the council member about this dispute already, I think that there should be transparency about that and what was discussed before we attempt to do any kind of mediation like this.
That's fair.
Okay. So really quick, do you feel that this mediation is not necessary? I mean, would you vote no against having this type of dialogue?
I think I would have to understand more whether there have been ex parte communications, and either the council member mentioned you council member mentioned that you heard, you heard about some of these conflicts going on. So I would just like to understand better, just because like you haven't heard from me. I'd just like to understand better like what you've heard and who you heard it from.
This is all from the city council meeting. This was Gleam Davis made a series of allegations, and other council members talked about what they had heard, and so I'm just taking it from the city council meeting.
Yeah, Commissioner Kamner, if I may, Oscar, this all stems from the item, I think it was 13C, at the last city council meeting regarding potentially suspending the Housing Commission meetings. And there was a lot of misinformation in the discussion among the city council members, and not all of it productive, but they finally agreed that we should be taking care of our own business, and they didn't need to interfere, and that we should continue with our meetings. And in the course of discussing conflicts, Council Member De La Torre just offered his services if they were welcome, to help facilitate some of these conversations between commissioners and staff, not just among commissioners, but between commissioners and staff also, which as far as I'm concerned has been the biggest problem, communication with staff. So that's where this is.
Thank you. I was actually familiar with that council meeting. I listened to that. I guess my question is whether there have been communications between the council member and the commissioners already about this.
The idea is to come here today to try to get to be transparent and open with every commissioner. So this is the first time that I would hear any feedback in terms of what the outcomes would be for a mediation. So there have been no communication in terms of specifics, just wanting to understand, what you all want to achieve, in a mediation. I mean, I personally feel when there's conflict, there should be some type of dialogue and mediation. But I don't know if you have another way of doing it. If you feel that there's a better approach, we would like to hear it, because we want to be effective. I mean, this whole goal right here, and my intention is just to help, clear up some policies, understand our roles and responsibilities better, set some expectations and some goals, for the next fiscal cycle. Really just to facilitate the work that you all are doing. I have no intention of controlling any agenda or bringing anything forward, but to just really help you all be more functional and more effective. And that's my intent and my goal.
To answer your question, Commissioner Kamner, because I appreciate asking about ex parte communication. To my knowledge, and at least on my part, there's been no, the only communication that I've had with Council Member De La Torre was about him coming tonight and saying that we would be able to, that I would move to put his item earlier on in the agenda because he had time constraints. But we didn't discuss anything specific. I just thanked him for his willingness to help. But there was no substantive conversation until right now.
Good, thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. So, Commissioner Kamner, do you have any outcomes that you would like to see accomplished in a structured dialogue or mediation, for lack of a better term?
I mean, I would like to discuss in a mediation the unfair treatment that I've received on this commission, but because I have a minority viewpoint.
Okay, thank you. So the idea of how do we protect minority opinions, right? And ensuring that we protect the views or respect, the views of all people, of all commissioners. Would that be fair to document?
Yes, and if I could add something else, the issue of ensuring that comment and discussion is on agendized topics and not personalized attacks against commissioners.
Okay.
And like enforcing that that rule, like that already existing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in. So I think that we as a commission need clarity relative to what Commissioner Kamner mentioned, and more specifically, the ability to communicate outboard of commission meetings. Picking up the phone and calling another commissioner based on the training that I've received is not a Brown Act violation. And I think we need some clarity on that so we all have a common understanding. Council member, I think to your earlier point, many of us are new to this commission. Consequently, we do not know each other. And part of our problem has been a lack of communication. And I think a misread of our respective actions, both within the confines of commission meetings and outside of the commission meetings. And said differently, I really believe that we need much better communication amongst ourselves. And also, we need as a commission to work better together in a more professional and civil manner. And if we do that, we can accomplish an awful lot. If we don't do that, we won't accomplish what we want to, which will be a disservice to the residents of Santa Monica.
Okay,
so
great.
That's my input.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a lot of good notes on that feedback. Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Going down the line, anybody else want to give me some more feedback so I can, the idea for me is to put a document together to share with you all so everybody knows exactly what the goals are going to be for the dialogue that we're going to have in the near future. And anyone else want to add some items that we should be discussing on that day?
I would just,
go ahead.
I would just like to, I mean, I have many things that I would like addressed, but outside of like communication with other commissioners, I really want to understand better the agenda process, setting the agenda, how we communicate about prioritizing the agenda amongst this actually was part of the topic that we have under 4C, like the development of that process. So I'd like to learn more about that and the staff's role in that agenda process and what to do if you are having disagreements about what should be on the agenda.
Okay, that sounds great. And that's really about bylaws. And so I'll be looking at the bylaws with staff so that we clarify that going into this session. We will definitely have an answer for you, Madam Chair, on what we need to do, how the agenda is set, who has roles and responsibilities around that. So that's a pretty easy thing to clarify.
Okay, great.
Anyone else before we go? Because I want to respect everyone's time.
Can I make
I
another?
have a few comments.
Yes, Richard.
AB 1234 is a state conflict of interest training requirement, and civility and meeting process is separate to that, and for some reason it's been missing since the March meeting. I've been attending meetings for 20 years. I've never seen, for example, lack of commissioner cooperation, but for March and April, there's been departures, exceptions made to our rules, bylaws, especially the chair's role in the preparation of agendas. For example, if every commission member has equal opportunity to the chair in the preparation of agendas, there would be no order, no organization. And I think that follows up on some of the previous comments about staff intervention, but also staff consistency. And I don't think we've had staff consistency. And also, finally, as the final comment, is that we need collaboration and cooperation. For example, when the chair or commissioner calls using a telephone, for example, if there's an ADA alternate format requirement, not making excuses why you can't call back. In other words, courtesy, respect. And I think it should be enforced by city administration. And they haven't also interpreted the dynamics, such as the May 10th City Council meeting. They were all present and they were silent. But I want to thank the council member for your offer, Council Member De La Torre.
Thank you, Richard. And you know, the issues that you raised around ADA, we will take those very seriously. So I'm going to report back to staff my notes today, because I want to be very prepared, and I hope that we will be consistent moving forward on making sure that we provide adequate, how would you say, we want to support you. You know, we want to definitely support you and anyone else that needs any type of special arrangement so that you can participate. So I'll make sure that we follow up on that as well. So thank you, Richard, for that. Anyone else before we conclude this item?
I have another comment. This is Commissioner Kamner.
Yes.
While I appreciate this, and you know, I think that this is necessary and constructive. I still take issue with the council member being the mediator for this. I think it should be somebody impartial who hasn't taken a position on these disputes already. And you know, especially regarding my issue that I raised. You know, the council member, you know, expressed on the dais public opinions against me and voted to remove me from the commission. So I don't feel like the council member can be an impartial mediator on this dispute. And also, I'm anticipating that there's already going to be retaliation against me for, you know, for that, and you know, for the comments I'm making now when I'm not reappointed on this commission.
I can guarantee you that my whole intent is to use my 20-something years of experience in conflict resolution to try to help this commission. And despite any, you know, bygones be bygones. I mean, whatever has happened in the past, I mean, we can deal with it. And I would love to talk to you personally about it. I mean, just to let you know that I want to practice what I preach. And we haven't had an opportunity to talk, so I would love to talk to you one-on-one, and we can discuss those issues. But ultimately, really, the goal is just to help the commission move forward with its work and its work product. And I don't want to let personality get involved in that, and I'm not going to let my personality or my issues with you or anyone else impede sort of the work that we're trying to do here, which is identify common ground amongst commissioners, you know, identify a common agenda that we can all work on. I think we all care about a lot of the same issues, even myself. I mean, me and you should talk and meet so that we don't take...
Councilmember, I sent you a request to talk one-on-one before you voted to remove me from the commission. So I don't know why that was ignored. So yeah, I guess like I think that there, you know, when a public position is taken by a council member on a dispute, that person is not an impartial, it cannot serve as an impartial mediator on that dispute.
Well, the dispute with you is separate, but we can focus on the disputes that are going on within the Housing Commission. I think is much more important. I mean, my personal issues are not as important as what's going on in the city, and I would think that your personal issues are not more important than the work of the commission. So this is really about, if it's an issue between me and you, let's be adults about it. We can talk about it. I mean, look, I'll give you my phone number right now because I'm not really good on emails. If you send me an email, I apologize because I'm not good on emails. But if you send me a text message, I guarantee you that I'll respond to it. And I don't know if you want my email, my phone number right now. I'll give you my phone number right now. And we can talk.
Sure.
Would you like my phone number right now?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, and anybody else can write it down. Feel free to contact me. It's 310-922-5122. That's 310-922-5122. And I'd love to sit down with you and talk. Is there anyone else before we go that wants to give me some outcomes or some issues that I should be aware of before we move forward on any of this?
This is Gina Tabaka, and I just kind of wanted to agree with some of the things that were already said. That what I've seen since I've been on the commission is the infrastructure, the support. It's been lacking. It's been lacking from what I see for all the different boards and commissions that I've served on throughout the years. This is really in bad shape in comparison. Even in comparison, to being on the PTA. I mean, they have it together. They have it really pulled together good. So it's just been lacking.
Okay.
And communication, I know that was already mentioned, and I just want to say, yes, we need to work on communication. We need support, and we need support from the city. These things were already mentioned, so I'm just saying that I'm in agreement. We need help.
Okay.
And also, I want to thank you for stepping up to the plate to assist us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oscar, too. One thing I want to say. This is Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
First, I want to say thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you making this attempt to mediate. I think what I'm hearing is this discussion is really going to probably fall into two different buckets. One is just how do we get the training to run a proper commission? And that might be something that sounds more practical and more kind of a nuts and bolts conversation. And I don't know if you need to be the one leading that. I think part of it is, it's something that we could probably read up on, and there might be some training manuals. I'm just trying to think of the best way to use your time. Because I do think a big part of this is just an overall lack of understanding about how to run a commission and how to organize it. And I think there were a lot of toes got stepped on early on when newer members joined, and I think that's just a good kind of housekeeping training that we need. I think the other bucket is something more along the lines of how do we treat each other with civility, and how do we treat each other respectfully, especially in the public and group conversation. I think that's probably a way, Oscar, for you to add a lot of value to this conversation in the role of a mediator. I do think that Commissioner Kamner's concerns are valid, and I think there's some we do need to kind of think through the implications of what she was saying. And I don't know if this is the right forum to do it in, but I do respect her opinion and where she's coming from. I also think that we need to consider the other aspect of this is the more recent commissioners who were added to this commission, where we all need to learn to act in civil ways with each other. But there is, support that you've given as council member to some of the commissioners who I think are, have, in my view, acted in ways that were uncivil. And so I think we need to think through that as well as, the relationship there between you as a council person, which is probably, let's just face it, it is, although I applaud your role here, I do think there is somewhat of a problematic relationship between you as a council person and you serving as a mediator for this commission with the people that you've helped appoint. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration. All that being said, I say that is these are points of conversation. In my world, they're definitely not deal killers. I think we can all come together as adults and have a conversation knowing all the different complexity of this conversation and how we all approach it and how we're all kind of interrelated in different ways. And I think that I'm willing to move forward with this idea of a mediation, but I did want to put some points on the table that I think we need to be sensitive about when we do meet.
Yes, I really appreciate all the feedback, and I'm sensitive to the issue that Commissioner Kamner brought up, and that's why I want to meet with her personally, because look, I've been in this for many years, and my intention is to make this a better city. So I'm volunteering for this. No one told me to do it, and frankly, I felt like seeing that the staff was kind of very frustrated and other people were frustrated. I felt that no one else was going to step up, and I wanted to just be a support. So I don't want to hinder your work. I want to help you move forward with the agenda, and that's my 100% intent. And any mistakes that I've made, I mean, I'm open to constructive criticism like I am right now, and I want to meet with anyone. That's why I'm going to meet with Commissioner Kamner to learn more about how she feels about things, and I want to offer that to anyone else, and I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, and I want to own my mistakes and take responsibility. But ultimately, if I can correct my mistakes, I will. And if I can find a way to work with you all better, like, I'm willing to do that. And I think I want to model that the behavior that I think we need to make this commission a great commission, an effective commission. And that's my intention, is to just make it work and to be a support for you all. So anyway, that's my point.
I think, I take this as you're making a good faith effort to help us. And I want to honor that and acknowledge that we all, come to this conversation with everyone has their own flaws that we bring to this. And so I think that I'm happy that you're doing this, and I hope that it leads to a good result.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback, and I think that's a good culmination and a good segue into the next agenda items for your meeting. I want to thank you all very much for your feedback. Unless there's one final, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get to give you my feedback.
Okay, great.
I echo a lot of what has already been said here. There are serious problems with reasonable disability accommodations with the city. It's something that I'd like to see taken up with the incoming city attorney, as the interim city attorney has shown little interest in accommodating people with disabilities, from my experience. And that accounts for some of the communication issues. So that's important. And I agree with Commissioner Hamilton's characterization that it seems like part of this is about infrastructure and nuts and bolts, and some of it is interpersonal. From a nuts and bolts perspective, and I agree with Commissioner DeBaca too, the infrastructure here is shaky at best. This is not the first board that I've served on, and my understanding coming into a new board is that you have some basic documents that you can refer to, as Commissioner Hamilton alluded to find out what the rules are and how you should behave. And to give an example, the mistake that I made at the last meeting about how many votes were required was after me diligently studying the bylaws and brushing up on Robert's rules. And it was actually just an ambiguous phrasing in the bylaws that in order for you to know what was meant, you just had to have been around the city for a long time and know how it's been done. So I'd like to see the bylaws clarified, processes clarified, see a way for us to ensure responsiveness from staff. I second what Ms. Zarowska said earlier about differentiating between a staff liaison and a secretary. The secretary is meant to help us keep minutes and administer the meeting smoothly, and a staff liaison is purposely a senior staff member that acts as a source of institutional information, institutional memory. So I think it's important that we have both. And then from an interpersonal perspective, and something that I don't think has necessarily been addressed tonight, although it's been brought up before, is that in an evolving world where long-standing practices can sometimes conflict with our commitments to equity and inclusion, I think it's important to acknowledge and address power imbalances and processes that can disenfranchise commissioners and other Santa Monicans, especially those who are new to the city. And I realize that there's some friction that can happen there with new people incoming, but I think that I think that we're all up to the task of addressing the complexity of those interpersonal issues and being being forthcoming about them, and as you said, taking the position that assuming that the person speaking these things has positive intent. So I'd like to see that addressed, and that also that also feeds into the part that Commissioner Hamilton mentioned civility, that he thought some of these things had not been civil. Mayor Himmelrich said something similar at a recent city council meeting, admonishing the public for being uncivil when they were giving constructive criticism about a person's inaction that was totally legitimate. And Council Member Davis gave a similar speech at the recent city council meeting. And my point, and what I'd like to make sure is included in this, as part of what I was saying about longstanding practices versus incoming people and inclusion and equity, is that it's important to differentiate between civility as a tool for facilitating conversation, especially when there are differences between us, and civility being used as a pretext to silence dissent, which is what it has been in this case.
Oh, no. She's nuts.
I'm sorry, who's
Commissioner Gray, Commissioner Gray, I hear you on that. I think those are my approach always is to talk about issues of power within every facilitation, because I think that's the root, of all relationships, is to understand those imbalances, of power. So we'll definitely talk about that, and the whole thing about civility versus criticism. I have a lot of experience dealing with that, on the school board and the city council. So I think it'd be a very robust discussion for us to identify what is uncivil, and we'll talk about it with clear examples, because there are some clear examples on this commission of people that feel that the behavior was uncivil towards another person. But then there are some people who might differ and say, this is about, criticism and constructive criticism versus non-constructive. We can talk about all that, but I think you all gave me a whole lot. I'll show you. I have a lot of notes that I'm going to type up. I'm going to develop an agenda and a plan for the 2 hours that we'll spend together. We'll see if it's a weekend that's better or a weekday. And you all have my phone number. Call me if you missed something. If you feel you need to talk to me, off record or just, on the side, so that I can understand better how I can be more effective, in my approach working with you all. So my commitment is to, to learn as much as I can and to be with you all through this process and come out with new expectations, a new way of doing work and just a more welcoming and a more safe environment, to do the work in. So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Look forward to working with you all. I'll be getting back to you definitely early next week to schedule some time and with notes and everything so that you all can review what I have so far. And then feel free to give me more input, more feedback, as we begin this process. Okay.
Thank you very much, Councilmember De La Torre. We appreciate your help. I appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless. Thank you all, and we'll be in touch. And looking forward to our discussions together.
Thank you, Councilmember De La Torre. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Vice Chair Marasco, I did want to continue with this item for a moment, but I would like to know who is at the phone number ending in 4401. 4401.
David Morris. David Morris.
David Morris. Okay. I didn't know who it was. I just heard derogatory comments in response to what I was saying, so I wanted to know who it was that disapproved of what I was saying. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you right now. I wanted to address Commissioner Kamner's concern about the Brown Act, which is an excellent point. And I think that because the Brown Act does carve out some exceptions in terms of a quorum of commissioners getting together and speaking about things for things like conferences or ceremonial dinners, things like that, educational opportunities. And I think that there's space here to be clear and strict about discussing things that are not actually business that would come before the commission, not discussing potential agenda items. I think maybe Councilmember De La Torre misspoke when he used that exact example, but it's meant to be more of, I think, a housekeeping and a process discussion. But I agree with you that it's not appropriate for us to sit down and discuss things that are also the people's business and should be discussed in public. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you. Yes, that does help. I mean, I feel like it's a fine line, so I just want to be extra careful about anything that could potentially be considered business.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I just wanted to point out is that even if there's like one-on-one commissioner communications, it could still be hub and spoke Brown Act violation. So just something to keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely. And I did hear you, and I believe Commissioner Hamilton, about the potentially being problematic that that Councilmember De La Torre was acting as a facilitator in this case, because of prior actions that he's taken, with issues with you and with other people, or, including having appointed or helped appoint some of us. But I think that having stated that out loud, that it can help us all keep each other honest, that hopefully we can err on the side of caution in making sure that that we're being neutral and that he's helping us without influencing any particular side.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner DeBaca.
I'm wondering if you're implying something negative against Councilmember de la Torre, because that's not okay at all. He's one of the most honest men. He's an honest council member. He served the city. He grew up here. And I don't like what you're implying at all.
Commissioner DeBaca, who are you?
Talking to
What she was just saying a few minutes ago regarding
I'm sorry,
de la Torre.
Commissioner DeBaca, which commissioner are you speaking about?
Who was just speaking
Oh,
prior to me?
Commissioner Gray or Commissioner Camner?
It was Camner, I believe.
It sounds like you were saying that you object to the characterization that Council Member De La Torre may not be impartial. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's fine that he's offered his help, and I don't think we should demonize him for offering to help us. I think that's a great thing. That's a wonderful thing. We obviously need help. We need help. We need help on several levels. I mean, it's borderline illegal, these meetings. We were getting no assistance. There was no minutes being taken. I've never seen such complete lack of infrastructure. There was no minutes. Then we have somebody who needs, a commissioner that needs, hello, we have a Disabilities Act. We have laws in place for that. And yet he is not, this particular commissioner is not receiving any assistance in that area. That's illegal. Our city should make sure that he has whatever tools it takes to communicate, to participate. So there's just so many different things going on wrong with the Housing Commission meetings. And now here's a council member stepping up to the plate and saying, hey, how can we fix this? We should actually be thankful instead of saying, oh, this is, against the Brown Act. Are you joking? No, it's not.
If I could respond to that, Vice Chair Marasco?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Commissioner DeBaca, I agree with you. I am grateful that Council Member De La Torre stepped forward and offered his help in a discussion during the City Council meeting that was otherwise largely not productive and not even accurate concerning the Housing Commission. We have a lot of problems, especially with infrastructure, and we need better support and structure in place. And I am grateful that he offered his services. I do want to say that having been the person to walk into many rooms where I was a new person or an unaffiliated person walking into a room with people that I knew had prior relationships to each other and perhaps had, built up institutional power amongst them, I can appreciate where Commissioner Camner and Commissioner Hamilton are coming from when they say that it could be problematic that the person who is supposed to be an impartial mediator has also previously engaged in actions that would seem to favor some commissioners over others. I think that that's fair to point out, and I think in pointing it out, it will just help us to guard against that happening because we're being upfront about it. I don't think that she can correct me, but I don't think Commissioner Camner meant to, defame Council Member De La Torre in any way. And I agree with you that I'm grateful for his help and we need it.
Thank you.
So
and one more thing I wanted to say, because I had wanted to share this anyway, when you talk about violating the Brown Act, and I recently finished the new commissioner ethics training, and among all the other things that I took away from it, one thing surprised me and seemed notable to me, which is that the goal of our public meetings is not efficiency, it's transparency. I hadn't looked at it that way before. I wouldn't have thought that efficiency wasn't one of the top goals, and apparently it is, but it doesn't trump transparency. And so I think it's important that we bring up, any possible violations of the Brown Act, or even inadvertently leaving the public out of discussions, because these meetings and our dealing with the public's business are meant to be transparent. So I always appreciate somebody pointing that out.
And I'm going to say, with that being said, maybe instead of making this a mediation per se, maybe making the meeting into a retreat like the city council does, and then it's public, and then there is no Brown Act violation. So, Commissioner Kamner, you mentioned, is this something that we should be discussing, which we've been doing? And if it's something that we should vote on, I'm not sure if we're all agreeing that we are going to attend this mediation, or maybe preferably make it a retreat, or if we actually need to go to a vote on this. I don't know how you all feel about it in general, if we're all moving forward and saying, yes, we agree to do this, and then we can figure out, with Councilmember De La Torre about making it a retreat as opposed to like a mediation. Because my understanding is it's not going to be talking about individual issues or, disputes. It's about things that are unclear, that have arisen, things that may be clear to some commissioners, such as Commissioner Hilton, Hamilton, or Kamner, because they've been commissioners for some time, but may not be so clear to other commissioners. So that was my understanding of it all, that it wasn't going to be based on the individual issues that have been going on. So I don't feel like there is any need to worry about there being bias or anything like that. This is just simply, in my mind, how we can move forward as a team, working collectively on the issues that we know is under the purview of the Housing Commission, and how we communicate about that. And, again, I have felt that there was no really clear direction about setting the agenda and how items get placed on the agenda, or even an clear understanding of what an actual work plan is supposed to look like, and what a subcommittee, how a subcommittee should go forward. Those are just my examples of things that have been very unclear to me, and things that are not actually stated in the bylaws, because I have reviewed the bylaws. I purchased Robert's Rules of Order and newly revised, and the in-brief version as well. And I have studied these things, but there's a lot of things that are ambiguous to me. And I've even gone so far as to seek clarity from the deputy city attorney, because I didn't even understand, where do I find this information? I couldn't even Google Santa Monica Housing Commission bylaws and actually get the bylaws by Googling. I had to request it. It's not even, these documents aren't even on the Housing Commission website, and it should be available to everyone, especially commissioners. These are the documents that are basically, explaining our roles and responsibilities. So with that being said, is everyone in agreement that we are going forward on this? With Councilmember De La Torre's facilitating a dialogue among us commissioners and the city staff about the Housing Commission concerns and protocols?
I still have the same concerns.
Okay, so does that mean we should take this to a vote?
Can I say something? I guess my question is, if that's the case, then why would we call it? I'm confused about the term mediation, because mediation in the context, Commissioner Maraska, that you described, it sounds more like we're moving towards a kind of a workshop on how to run a commission, as opposed to a mediation, which, you know, begs the question of, well, what parties need mediation? And that seems to me to be something that's much more going to focus much more on a personal level. It's going to be us directly addressing, you know, a number of personal issues that have come up within the last 5 months on this commission. You know, I've been on this commission for much longer than that. We did not have these kind of issues that came up, you know, prior to, you know, January of this year. And so I think I think reading between the lines is we need to, they're calling it a mediation, by the city council is calling this a mediation because there are personal issues that need to get worked through. Otherwise, we should just call it a workshop. Is the use of the word mediation, is that
No,
part of the
I agree with you, Commissioner Hamilton. I don't think mediation is the right word. If there is a mediation, it's fair to say what parties are being mediated between. And I don't think it's a mediation amongst commissioners so much as mediation between the Housing Commission and the city. That has been a major problem. And despite many people's best efforts to discuss, you know, various things that should be just a matter of simple procedure, this city has either not been responsive or they've been responding inappropriately. And so,
okay, but if that's the case, then who will be representing the city at the mediation? Because we know it's not going to be Councilman De La Torre.
well, I don't think mediation is the right word. I think facilitated conversation is probably a better phrase, because first of all, the city has no interest in sitting down with us and discussing anything. But as a representative of the city, Council Member De La Torre is interested in discussing this with us. And I think that his intent in having us get together for these 2 hours, for example, and to hear in more detail what we need and what's going on and what's missing, I think his intent is to take all of that and he would speak on our behalf to the city to try and negotiate resolutions to that and resources that we need and clarify things like that. In addition to helping us do things like make the bylaws more explicit, which would require some, negotiation with the city council because of the ordinance that controls the template for the bylaws and on. But I don't think I agree with you that mediation is probably not the right word.
I think, if I may, I think we're spending more time on this than we need to. I do agree that we as a commission need help, and whether you want to call that mediation or facilitation or however you want to label it, the intent here, I believe, is to make this commission more effective. And nothing more, nothing less.
Get the fuck off. Get the fuck down.
I'm sorry, someone needs to mute themselves.
I've muted them. I apologize. Please continue, Commissioner Gomez.
Yeah, so again, I think what it comes down to, I think the real question is, do we think we need some assistance in terms of becoming more effective? Yes or no? I believe that we do. And if we're in agreement on that, I would offer that we should move on. If we don't, I think that's a different discussion.
Well, I would just like to maybe make a motion that instead of calling this mediation, that it be a retreat with City Council Member De La Torre, again, to facilitate a dialogue amongst the commissioners and the city staff and Housing Commission concerns and protocols. Is there a second on my motion?
Can I have a point of clarification? I'm not familiar with the City Council's recent retreat, and my understanding of a retreat doesn't lend itself to public participation. So could you clarify for me what that means?
Well, I'm not exactly, I can't really clarify. So my understanding is that if it's done as a retreat, it's not a Brown Act violation because the public, there's to be public access.
I guess that just doesn't gel with my understanding of a retreat, but that's okay. Does it need to be that specific? Can we just?
My understanding is that it's made accessible to the public so that the public can participate.
Okay.
And you're talking about transparency, so it would probably be better to do it this way. I mean, I'm just trying to move on from this item. So if we can, it seems that the word mediation is problematic because as you pointed out, then it would be a mediation between specific parties. And I don't think that was the intention. So maybe if we do this as a retreat where it's noticed, it's like a public meeting and the public can attend and participate.
Can I say one? I think we can call it whatever we want. I do agree we do need to move on. The whole concept of a mediation came about during the city council meeting, specifically talking about the dysfunction within the Housing Commission and between members of the Housing Commission. The context, so during that discussion, Council Member De La Torre said, I will mediate within the Housing Commission. It was never framed as a conversation between the commission and the city about getting us more resources. That has been something that I've heard repeatedly from certain members of this commission, and you're certainly welcome to have that viewpoint. Right? And I think there's a lot of validity to us needing staff, and what the caller brought up at the very beginning of the meeting, I think was very instructive. I was not aware of the fact that funds had been set aside to staff the Housing Commission based on the former chair's action before City Council. All that being said, though, this is not a mediation to promote this idea that we should be getting more resources from the city, although I do think that's something that we need to get. This was specifically to deal with interpersonal conflict within the Housing Commission. So we don't need to call it a mediation, but having been on this commission now for 18 plus months, the dysfunction has only been present for the last about 5 months. And that's what the city council is trying to solve right now. I just think we need to just acknowledge the fact that that's why we're being brought together. It's not to repeat our claims or need to have more city support for our commission and to work through the mediation or discussion between the commission and the city council. That was never the intent. And I say that knowing that we can all have a conversation and walk away with completely different interpretations of that conversation. So I'm cognizant that I might have misheard, but I feel pretty certain that the discussion at the city council was about trying to solve some of the interpersonal conflict within this commission.
So
Anyone remember that the right way? There's
I-
audio.
oh,
I just wanted to say that just briefly, I wanted to point out that the bulk of the discussion about the Housing Commission during the City Council meeting was inaccurate and I think a distortion of the facts. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that our problems are interpersonal, so, any more than any other board or commission, but we, can have conversations and dialogue and, act in good faith and take votes and, move on. We're all adults. To me, the problem has been, and I didn't mean to focus on resources as if we were asking for more from the city. This is just about the city providing what they've already legally agreed to provide, what they're already bound by Sydney ordinance and the charter and bylaws and the budget. They're already required to provide these things. And in the last couple months, at least for the last couple months, some senior staff have been obstructive. And so I think that this idea of there being interpersonal conflict has been a convenient red herring for a lot of people, officials in particular, who would like not to, have the focus be on staff. If you saw the city council meeting, you saw that Councilmember Davis went on at length about how staff was being abused, which I thought was an unfair characterization when staff was actually not doing their job. And I also want to say that I'm not at all speaking about Mary Orr here, who's with us tonight and graciously helping us run Blue Jeans for this meeting. I greatly appreciate all of Mary's help. But in terms of senior staff, so my understanding was not that this facilitated discussion was meant to be about interpersonal conflicts so much as helping us as a commission get what we need and move forward, because there are so many structural problems. And a lot of that has to do with the city not providing things that we need, like basic governing documents. I asked at my first meeting at the last meeting for a copy of the bylaws, and no one in the city can give me a dated and signed copy of the bylaws. Like the copy we have right now could have been someone's, touch typing homework. There's no framing documentation around it. So these are some basic issues that I think we need assistance with. And so my understanding really wasn't that it was meant to be primarily interpersonal, but to help us just be effective in resolving a number of factual problems that we have.
So I really think we should, a couple of things. I really think we should move on. I think at this juncture, we're repeating ourselves. And the last commentary that I would make is I am concerned anytime we think our operational issues as a commission are somebody else's. I think we all need to look in the mirror, staff included. We all contribute to this, and we all need to get ourselves out of this. And if we think we're innocent, then I don't necessarily think we're being objective. And so that being said, I think each and every one of us, including the commissioners, could make some improvements to make us more effective. We either believe that we need some facilitation and some assistance, or we don't. I believe we do, and we should just move on. Because again, at this juncture, I don't think we're being productive.
To that end, because I agree, can I make a friendly amendment to your motion, Vice Chair Marosco, and just move that we agree that we'll proceed in a discussion with Councilmember De La Torre, at least for this initial conversation that he'd like to have, and we'll ensure that it doesn't violate the Brown Act, and we can discuss details outside of this meeting.
Yeah, I would say that we should call it a retreat so that we can make it a public meeting for the sake of transparency. So,
I'm not familiar with the idea of retreat being a special designation that makes something possible to be a meeting. I mean, we can still make a special meeting, right? My understanding of a retreat is
I'm not exactly sure that we need to like focus so much on what we're calling it per se. My understanding is a retreat is something more official and something that we're just basically piggybacking off of what city council does, and in a way to where it's made public, that it's transparent, that the public can participate, and it would be like a noticed meeting. I mean, I don't know that you call it a special meeting. I'm very unclear on that. And if it needs to change, if the language needs to change from retreat to just, the actual, how it's stated on the agenda is facilitated dialogue among commissioners and city staff about housing commission concerns and protocols. Right. So making it a retreat would be a way to avoid a Brown Act violation and a way for the public to participate.
I respect what Commissioner Gomez and Hamilton have said about moving on. I really do think we need to move on. I don't feel comfortable voting on something with a concept that I'm clearly so unfamiliar with. I don't want to vote to commit to something that I don't fully understand. So would it be acceptable if the motion in general were that we collectively agree to proceed with this conversation with Councilmember De La Torre, and that we can work out the details at a later date?
Okay, so to be clear, can you state your amendment exactly how you want it?
I'm sorry, I don't remember verbatim what you said before. I move that we agree to proceed with facilitated discussion with Councilmember De La Torre, and that we can decide the details of that, its publicity, and so on at another time.
Okay, so shall we go to a roll call vote on this amended motion?
We need a second.
Or I'm sorry, second.
I second.
Okay. And now we'll go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Kamner.
No.
Commissioner DeBaca.
I want to clarify. So please, if you could repeat what we're actually voting on, I apologize.
Okay. We're voting on. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Commissioner Gray.
The motion is to proceed with a facilitated conversation with Councilmember De La Torre, and that the details of that can be decided at a later time.
Yes, I vote in favor.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Gray.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton.
The motion lacks important specifics, but my vote is yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. So that is 6 yes and 1 no. The motion passes. Now we'll move to item 4C, agenda development process. Discussion and possible action regarding amending Housing Commission bylaws to expand and clarify the agenda development and approval process and clarify the procedure to follow when chair, vice chair, and/or commissioners disagree on agenda content. And before I call, call for public comment on this, I just want to state that I'm actually going to move to postpone this item and to try to work this out during the facilitated dialogue that we have with Councilmember De La Torre. But with that being said, is there any public comment on 4C?
Can I think if we're going to withdraw the motion, I don't think we need to have public comment on that. So should we take a roll call vote about withdrawing before we go to public comment? Is that the right way to go?
Sure. Okay, is there a second to postpone item 4C?
I second.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And now go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Camner.
Sorry, I stepped away and I missed this motion. Can you come back to me?
Oh, okay, sure. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. So basically, in light of the discussion and plans to address multiple issues, including the agendizing process with City Council Member De La Torre's assistance, I'm moving to postpone item 4C until those discussions have taken place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Commissioner Camner, your vote to postpone item 4C?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So all are in favor and the motion to postpone item 4C passes. Now we will go to continued items, agenda item 4, continued items. And we will begin with 4A, the work plan. So 4A1 is Fair Housing Month Speakers Update, and that would be Vice Chair Marasco speaking about City Attorney Gary Rhodes and Legal Aid Foundation Attorney Denise McGranahan coming to speak about fair housing. Second would be subcommittee update regarding Housing Authority Program speakers. That is also Vice Chair Marasco item. And then subcommittee update on inviting ADA Section 504 coordinator speak at a future meeting, and that would be Commissioner Gomez's item. Before we go forward, are there any public comments for 4A? No public comments for 4A. So we will go forward for a work plan 1, Fair Housing Month speaker update, Vice Chair Marasco. So City Attorney Gary Rhodes and attorney from Legal Aid Foundation, Denise McGranahan, are planning to go ahead and go forward and attend our June meeting and give their presentation at that time. So that's very good news. And then work plan for item 2, subcommittee update regarding Housing Authority Program speakers. David White, Andy Agel, Satara Yavari, Jim Kemper will be attending on July 21st to discuss Housing Authority programs and to answer any questions commissioners or the public may have. And now we will move to subcommittee update on inviting ADA Section 504 coordinator to speak at a future meeting, Commissioner Gomez.
Yeah, so what I need is when we would like to invite them. And once we do that, I will facilitate getting them there.
Okay. Um, is that something that we should decide now or?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can either decide now or we can work it offline. But of course, we had Gary Rhodes and Denise scheduled for April 21st, right? And that was the meeting that was canceled.
Right.
So if anybody has any preference in terms of what month we would like the ADA Section 504 and the Disabilities Commission Chair and Vice Chair, I'd welcome the input. If not, I can proceed and test what their schedules are like.
Can I ask what the goal is of their attendance and speaking?
Well, yeah, we talked about this at a commission meeting and voted unanimously to have them come and speak to us.
There wasn't a directive, though, what they were going to speak about?
Well, what I could do is I could provide the correspondence, right, in terms of what we sent. So we had secured them to come, and then we were going to talk about the specifics in terms of their presentations, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
but if anybody has any preference in terms of when we might invite them, June, July, then what I could do is provide some specifics to the commission in terms of confirming them and also what they'll be specifically talking about.
So could we just say a future commission meeting and that we'll work out the logistics as far as like the timing of, so in other words, Gary Rhodes and Denise McGranahan finding out like how much time they need to see if there's enough time for them to be at that same meeting. That's a lot of speakers, I think, at one meeting, but I mean, are
Right.
we doing something like this that we can decide at a later date where they would fit into the schedule?
Yeah, I think you raise a good point. What I would suggest is that we try to get these speakers at our July meeting so that we don't overextend ourselves in the June meeting. And if folks are in agreement with that, I can proceed accordingly.
Except for that may be a conflict because there's actually going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 people from Santa Monica speaking on the Santa Monica Housing Authority programs in July. So,
yeah,
I mean, maybe discussing how much time should be given, I feel like that is the city manager, David White, and Santa Monica Housing Authority staff are like a very, at least a 2-hour presentation, question and answer. A lot of questions may be coming up on this, so I'm not sure July, it would be a good time. It would probably, and I understand what you're saying about Gary Rhodes and Denise McGranahan giving their presentation. I don't even know how much time they were expecting to spend for presentation. So do you have any idea how much time they plan to spend?
I do know when I didn't talk specifically or communicate specifically with Gary, but I did with Denise. And what we talked about was somewhere between her presentation being 20 minutes with about 10 minutes for Q&As, so about 30 minutes in total. And as you well know, anytime someone speaks, more times than not, they go over as opposed to under,
Sure.
right? So what I'd offer up is that I would probably, pencil in more like 35 to 45 minutes for each speaker. We could fit in, I would suspect, another speaker in June if they're available, and perhaps one in July. If you think trying to get one more in July is too much, we could extend it to one to August, right?
Okay. Okay.
If I may, I do think we should spread these out as much as possible so we don't overload. I like the idea of spacing these speakers out to give them, so we have enough time to ask as many questions as we need so nobody feels rushed.
A good point.
Agree with that.
And two, I just want the commission to keep in mind that we voted previously for HCD speaker to come, and also Demetria McCain from Secretary Demetria McCain from Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity at HUD. And I've actually had communication with her, and we're trying to work out a schedule with her. I don't know, maybe that's something that might need to be a special meeting just because of the time difference as she's in Washington, D.C. So, I mean, is this something that we can work out, like, as you were saying, offline, Commissioner Gomez? That
yeah, why don't we go ahead and, excuse me, yeah, so why don't we go ahead and do that? And I think some of the commentary in terms of spacing them out is a good one. And why don't we potentially look at perhaps both of these in August, if folks are in agreement with that, and proceed accordingly? Okay.
I would just make one friendly amendment, as we've already had this communication. If the Secretary of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity is available in August, that we make that a priority, only because her schedule is probably going to be less open than would be the schedule of the ADA coordinator. So can we just say contingent upon? And then if that's the case, I don't know, she might say she's not available until December. I'm still waiting for her secretary to get back to me on the actual date that she would be available. But can we say that it could be moved to the following month, and just making Secretary McCain priority?
Sure, we can do that.
I just wanted to make an observation that I agree that it's good for us to spread these out, and I don't want to, given that in July we'll be creating a new work plan for the year, which will be in effect when these speakers come. I didn't know if we might want to leave it a little more open to flexibility in order to best pair speakers with the topics at a given meeting, if that makes sense.
How about this for just an idea? If we can agree not to have any agendized items, could we have a special meeting where we, so if someone is on the East Coast, I mean, right now it's 10:50 in Washington, D.C. Could we have a meeting, at any time that works for all of us? It could be a public meeting, and it could be, we just won't have any agendized items on it. We could just feature a speaker to come in and talk to us and educate us about, what we want to learn from them. Is that even a possibility? So we're not tied to one meeting a month at a specific time?
I would agree with that, especially considering the time difference. I had thought, all along that in order to get, maximum, quality time with someone such as this Secretary of FHEO, that it should probably just be a standalone, like, special meeting. So something that's rare and hard to, coordinate, I do feel that it would be better as a special meeting.
I'm just,
Here,
Yeah,
Moscow.
Yes, Commissioner Hilton?
There was a question earlier, and this applies to the ADA office and the Disabilities Commission chair, vice chair, but also the 100% affordable housing provider. Our trust fund legal agreement with 100% nonprofits requires 15% interior modifications in each development. And there have been community concerns about an inventory, how to locate the units. And I'm following up what I've heard is that it might be best to invite them in August or thereafter when we have more time and meeting assurance.
Okay. I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's why I'm saying, so if we could just agree that we would do a special meeting for the Secretary of FHEO.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion? I'll second it.
I'm sorry. Yes, I move to make the meeting with the Secretary of FHEO, Demetria McCain, a special meeting, and it is according to her schedule. And you second that motion? And so the purpose of this is to make more room in the schedule also. So with that, let's go to roll call vote. Commissioner Camner?
Can you repeat the motion? Sorry.
Okay, so I move to make the meeting with the Secretary of FHEO, Demetria McCain, to be a special meeting, not a regularly noticed meeting, so that we can accommodate her schedule because of her being the time zone, and to make more room in the calendar for other speakers.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
yes.
Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. So that is 7 yeses, and the motion passes to make the meeting with the Secretary of FHEO a special meeting in the future. And Commissioner Gomez, you will coordinate with the ADA, the 504 coordinator for August. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Now,
Can I just ask a question? I understand that we're not certain about the content of the presentation by the commissioners from the Disabilities Commission. Did we have something specific in mind for the ADA/504 coordinator? I ask because I'm very much looking forward to her appearance. She's been pretty non-responsive to ADA issues for about a year now, in my own experience, and I'd like to know, is she giving a presentation? Are we discussing something with her? Are we, proposing things?
Right.
Since she's an
So
employee.
yeah, that's a good question. So I chuckle a bit. You'll have to excuse me because she was not even responsive to me, and consequently, I had to escalate, and I did get a response from Ollie's, who she works for, and so he agreed that she would attend one of our meetings, and also that he would attend with her. So this is I think this is a good time, I think, for commissioners to provide some additional input in terms of specifically what we want them to address. And perhaps one of the topics is going to be, their responsiveness or lack thereof, right? But it's a very good question, and if there are items that are specific that you would like them to address, it would be good to provide input now, and or we have some runway here, or to do it over the course of the next week or so. So whatever you prefer.
Just to let everyone know where I'm coming from, if it helps in our planning for future programming and agenda items. I'm disabled, I'm multiply disabled, and I've been trying to engage with the city, the housing authority, and the ADA coordinator and her boss for about a year on multiple reasonable accommodations. The ADA coordinator has been almost universally non-responsive. The one time she responded copying the person who had already denied to engage with me about it. I'm sorry. So I guess my sense as a consumer, as a disabled consumer, is that we don't have a functioning ADA coordinator. I know one has been designated, but I also understand that the ADA coordinator only works as an ADA coordinator part-time, and actually also has a full-time job with the city.
Right.
So it's my position that the city needs, at the very least, one full-time ADA coordinator. So I'm not sure how best to, frame our questions for that person, but I wanted to let you know, because I think this is quite a large problem that affects a number of areas. Disabled people make up 20 to 25% of the American population, and it's just a huge unaddressed need in the city. And as Commissioner DeBacca pointed out before, and others have pointed out, we don't even comport with ADA regulations in our meetings. So I think my point is just that it's an important issue, and I'd like to prepare for them properly and maybe conceive of a way that we can engage with them to get the most benefit from their presence with us.
So maybe Commissioner Gomez, if when it's time for them to attend a meeting, if we could be just provided like some information on what topics are going to be discussed, and we can prepare our questions in advance.
Right. Yeah, I'll certainly do that. But again, if there are some specifics, right, that could be shared with them, it would only facilitate a more productive presentation and meeting. And Commissioner Gray, just so you know, that was, again, a major topic of discussion that I did not have with the coordinator, but again, the person that she reports to. And what I'll do is I'll find the correspondence that I sent off to him. But essentially, what I said was very consistent with what you're saying, in that we have received numerous complaints, at least since I've been a commissioner, relative to the responsiveness on her part or lack thereof. And again, I experienced it firsthand, right? And so what I shared with him essentially was, if we don't have someone functioning in a full-time capacity in that position, how can we possibly be attending to what obviously is a very, very important position in the city? And so that's something they're going to need to address. But again, if there's anything else that you want me to add while I'm working with them, please let me know.
I think it might be helpful for us. Again, I like to go to, for lack of a better word, I'll call governing documents, basic information that, dictates, employees and departments, responsibilities and guidelines. I'd love to see what their mandate is, how much money has been allocated from the city for this position, what tasks, if she's been even given any specific tasks, or if she's been assigned a number of hours to work on this. My sense is that this is in name only. So I'd like to see if there's any evidence to the contrary. Job responsibilities, things like that. So if they could provide that, that would be great.
I just wanted
any other input?
I just wanted to mention that that people were on mute when I called for public comment on this item. And I did not realize that they were muted. So if there is any public comment on this item, if you could please give it now.
And Vice Chair Marasco, if I may, particularly if it's additive to what's already been discussed, as opposed to repeating what's been discussed, if that's possible.
Okay, sure.
Again, my name is Denise Barton, and I just want to say that my previous involvement with the city's ADA coordinators, that she's there for ADA for the ADA person for the city employees, and her specialty is not HUD or affordable housing tenant ADA. So, that's been my experience. So, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you,
That's
Ms.
helpful.
Barton.
I think the housing authority should also have their own ADA coordinator. I don't think one person in that position is too much to ask.
Are there any other public comment?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Olga Zuraska. I'm not sure if it's going to be helpful, but maybe you can start by asking the ADA coordinator to just provide a breakdown of, for the last year at least, how many cases she reviewed and the basic categories and how long it took her to resolve them and what the outcome was, just to get a sense of what this person is actually doing for the city in her role as the ADA coordinator. If anything, I have the suspicion that it's not going to be much, but my personal experiences with Ms. Medina were also disastrous. So that's my input. And I wanted to just ask in general, commissioners, when you ask to take the floor, the chair really should acknowledge who's speaking, because the public who's just listening through by the phone, we don't know who's speaking at any time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zaraska. My apologies. Are there any other public comments for this item?
Yes. I think that the
Morris, go ahead.
one thing, who's speaking?
This
Hello?
is Vice Chair Marasco. David Morris, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think that it should be made clear that the ADA official, basically they created this position due to blowback from the city residents of not having anybody in this position. This position was created out of the risk management office. It really is not an ADA office or a person at all. It's just someone that's handling both positions of risk management for the city and posing as an ADA officer. We need to get to the bottom of that. That's one thing for sure. Another thing, I'm surprised that Commissioner Kamner does not know the definition of a retreat in the city of Santa Monica, because the city has had multiple city council retreats, which all included the general public. That was the idea of the retreat, was to include the general public and update them on what's going on in the city in different areas and give them a chance to respond and see the actual activity of city council in a broader scope, rather than just having the city council meetings, which are confined to the city council chambers. They usually went to an auditorium and had a very big promotion for this retreat and invited the general public. That was the main concept of having the retreat, is to inform the public of what's going on with the council. So now you know what the retreat is in definition. I think it's a waste of time for us to put off business that's being addressed immediately tonight. If we don't address these items as they come up and we start postponing items, then you run out of time for other agenda items and nothing gets done. That's the problem with the past administration of this commission. So let's look at the future as hit the deck running with boots on, and let's get things done and solved and resolved and move on from there at a quicker pace so that we can actually facilitate more business to the city and give more advantage to the city people and the residents. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris.
I
Are
just
there
want
any?
to clarify, Mr. Morris said Commissioner Kamner didn't know the definition. I think he meant me.
Commissioner Gray, you could
Yes.
identify yourself. I don't
Yes.
think you, okay.
I was just, yes, this is Commissioner Gray. I was just saying that I'm the one who didn't, who wasn't familiar with the local use of the term retreat, not Commissioner Kamner. That's all.
Are there any other public comments for this item? Okay, if there's no more public comments, we will move on to 4B, future commission speakers. It's an update on inviting Disabilities Commission Chair and Vice Chair to speak at a future commission meeting. This is Commissioner Gomez's item, but before Commissioner Gomez goes forward on this, do we have any public comments for 4B? Any public comments for 4B? Last call. Okay, Commissioner Gomez, you have the floor.
Right. So on this one, I was working with Commissioner Hilton, so I'm going to defer to him on this agenda item.
Okay, Commissioner Hilton.
Yes. First, the ADA coordinator has consistently, the previous office has consistently attended Disabilities Commission meetings, every meeting, and that office has been located in the Human Services Division for obvious reasons, because that's the office that serves seniors and persons with disabilities. The two disabilities commissioners, the chair and vice chair, were invited to attend our meetings because, as stated, there were concerns about the 15% interior modifications requirement in our trust fund and the 100% affordable housing providers. And that legal agreement, I think it's item 12, requires interior changes for persons with mobility, hearing, and vision disabilities. So the plan was to have the chair and vice chair come to our meeting and provide their input, perspective, and discuss it with one of the 100% affordable housing providers. And I did reach out to one of our prominent trust fund recipients, and the executive director did say she would be able to attend the meeting.
I just want to point out, I may misunderstand, but it sounds like Commissioner Hilton, you're referring in part to item 9C on inviting an 100% affordable housing provider to discuss reasonable accommodations. Is that right?
Yes, these two items are a combination item.
Okay, I'm not quite. I mean, we're still in continued items, so I don't know if that's already been agreed on. It looks like that was just being brought up today.
Commissioner Gray.
Yes.
So when you're speaking, because I've not acknowledged you, the public doesn't know it's you speaking.
I apologize.
That's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt, but so that they can understand who's talking. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Gray. I was just inquiring because it sounded like Commissioner Hilton was also moving into item 9C, and we're still in continuing business. So I wasn't sure if we wanted to discuss that now or later. And it seems like the part about having the 100% affordable housing provider come to join us is only being proposed today in item 9 as a 9 item, whereas the continuing business seems to imply that the decision was already made to extend this invitation. Does that make sense? I didn't know if we were getting ahead of ourselves by talking about some of this now when it seemed like it was being brought up for the first time.
So we're talking about item 4B, future commission speakers, update on inviting Disabilities Commission Chair and Vice Chair to speak at a future commission meeting. So that's where we're at. And I think I'm understanding Commissioner Hilton, and I'm sorry, this is Vice Chair Marasco speaking. Commissioner Hilton, are you stating that both the ADA coordinator and the Disabilities Commission Chair and Vice Chair should be speaking at the same meeting? Or I'm not exactly sure what you're stating. We're just talking about them coming to speak at a future meeting.
Well, my description earlier was not a motion, but yes, the chair and vice chair of the Disabilities Commission could attend the meeting on interior accessibility and also with the ADA coordinator, or you could have them separately.
This is Commissioner Gray. I understand the logic of having the Disabilities Commission guests come when the ADA coordinator also comes, but it sounds like the other issue is something for us to discuss under item 9 as a related issue, because I'm not clear that we necessarily want to expand the speaker list for the meeting that we're talking about whenever that happens.
Well, most of the complaints or concerns about the lack of inventory and opportunity for these interior units has been deferred or referred to the Disabilities Commission. So I thought it would be best to have the chair and vice chair attend, especially that meeting.
Okay, this is Commissioner Gray. I guess what I'm saying is it sounds like you're presupposing the attendance of invitees that have not been agreed upon yet. And Commissioner Gomez, you're muted if you were trying to say something.
Yeah, apologies. Okay, so That might have been my mistake, right? Because I thought we were talking about item 9C. I thought we had moved on from 4. I thought our discussion relative to the items listed under 4, we were done with.
Well, we did, I'm sorry, Commissioner, this is Vice Chair Marasco. Commissioner Gray, we did actually vote to have the chair and vice chair speak at a future commission meeting. The chair and vice chair of the Disabilities Commission, we actually did vote on that, but not under the work plan. So this is simply to give an update, and I think that we did get the update that they did agree that they could come to a meeting in the future, correct? Commissioner Gomez or Commissioner Hilton?
This is Commissioner Gomez, correct. Again, I thought we were done with the updates on item 4. I didn't think they were open for discussion per se, because we had already decided to have these speakers. But, and again, just to, I'm sorry. I thought that we had moved on to 9C, and that's why I deferred to Commissioner Hilton.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I see. I understand now. I guess I was just confused because when you're saying they agreed to come to a future meeting, it wasn't stated, that when. But I guess we can go ahead and move on, considering you stated they're going to come to a meeting. So we're going past item 4C, as we've postponed that. Item 5, staff administrative items, there are none. Item 6, public hearing, there is none. Item 7, resolutions, there are none. Item 8, written communication, none. Now we move to item 9, Housing Commission member discussion items. And now we are moving to item 9A, fair housing handouts. HUD $4 billion budget increase, housing choice voucher utilization meeting. This is Commissioner Hilton's item. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Hilton, before I go to public comment, it shows that there's an attachment. However, I think that attachment was not regarding the $4 billion budget increase or housing choice voucher utilization meeting. I think it was meant for a topic that you were adding under the presentation that would be given during Fair Housing Month. And it was like, so I don't know if you're looking at the handout, Commissioner Hilton.
Yes, I'll propose that my 3 fair housing handouts be tabled. I think it would be more appropriate for the June meeting when we have the fair housing speakers attending. And it will be treated the same as number 9, housing commissioner discussion items. So if it's appropriate, I'll just turn now to the $4 billion HUD budget, and I'll describe those 2 items, remaining items under 9A.
Okay, go ahead. Commissioner
So
Hilton.
the first is the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First is.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hilton. I'm so sorry. First, even though it may be hard to make public comment, is there any public comment on item 9A? Okay, no public comment on 9A.
Is there someone speaking?
Okay, no public comment on 9A. Commissioner Hilton, if you could.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm
I'd
sorry.
like to make, yeah.
Sure.
This is
David Morris.
I'd like to speak to the fact that you're discussing this public comment. I think it's imperative that the Housing Authority seeks out additional funding. The funding for the voucher amount right now has been matched by Los Angeles County, which was $600 and some odd less than this amount last year. So it shows that how far Santa Monica is behind in bringing its voucher rate up to meet the adjusted rents of the 21st century, in 2022. You can't rent an apartment in Santa Monica for $1,930, a one bedroom. It's not available. So I think this needs to be expressed to the Housing Authority that they need to put it in writing to HUD that these funds need to be allocated to Santa Monica. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Are there any more public comments on 9A? Okay, no more public comments. Commissioner Hilton, if you want to go ahead, you have the floor.
I'll discuss these two items very briefly. HUD $4 billion budget increase first. And these two items come from the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, Washington, D.C. They have a publication called Monitor. I've been a member for 12 years. So the first one is the $4 billion with a B HUD budget. The Build Back Better fiscal year 2022 transportation HUD spending bill, after a lengthy delay, was passed by Congress and the U.S. Senate March 9th, 10th, and signed into law by President Biden on March 15th. It raises HUD funding by $4 billion. Most of the money, $3.2 billion, is for public housing, such as infrastructure, and we don't own or build public project housing here in Santa Monica. There was a $1+ billion increase in Section 8 housing assistance payment renewals, and this is mostly for HAP increases. Secondly, there was a HUD-sponsored meeting with industry groups in February on the Housing Choice Voucher program and how to increase voucher utilization. Despite the generally voucher issuances have increased nationwide, leasing in terms of units has fallen. In other words, while Section 8 funding overall has expanded, availabilities, meaning owner participation, has not. HUD representatives pointed out that administrative fees are able to be used for activities and expenses that help with voucher utilization, for example, security deposits, screening fees, etc. The non-HUD groups participating recommended that housing and urban development staff should travel to regional and staff conferences to discuss the new resources and how to increase voucher utilization. And that last paragraph, last part, coincides with inviting the HUD official to our, June or July meeting. That concludes my discussion items. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. That is very important and helpful information. And I agree that it coincides with the Secretary of FHEO coming to speak to the Housing Commission. Okay, so we're moving on now to 9B, which is discussion of and possible action on providing advice to Santa Monica Housing Authority Board on ways for the Santa Monica Housing Authority to facilitate resident advisory board communication. Are there any public comments on 9B? Any public comments on 9B? Okay, this item is my item, Vice Chair Marasco, and we, as Commissioner Gray stated in the beginning about the issue with the votes in the last meeting regarding this, I'm basically moving to provide the attached guidance. I don't know if everybody's looking at it, from the Housing Commission to the Santa Monica Housing Authority Board in the form of a letter or possibly in-person delivery at a future Santa Monica Housing Authority Board meeting as advice on how the Santa Monica Housing Authority can best facilitate the Resident Advisory Board, or RAB. Santa Monica Housing Authority staff member James Kemper will be giving a presentation to the Santa Monica Housing Authority Board sometime in the near future regarding how the Santa Monica Housing Authority can facilitate the RAB. So any in-person delivery should take place at that time. In other words, if it's going to be a presentation rather than a letter, that we do that presentation in person. And I would be the one to write the letter, so it's not me requesting that any other commissioner do it. And I already stated that previously. So again, this is a motion to provide the attached guidance in the form of a letter to the Santa Monica Housing Authority Board.
I'll second
And
that.
possible in-person delivery at a future meeting.
I second that. This is Commissioner Gray.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. And I'm sorry, I didn't ask if anybody wanted discussion on that. We actually discussed it.
This is Commissioner Kamner. I'm sorry, I can't seem to open the attachment. It says I don't have permission to open.
It seemed to me when I downloaded the agenda earlier that the actual attachments were attached to the agenda. If you look to the last, I think it's the last page of the agenda.
The agenda that I have in the email from 5/16/22, that one doesn't have any attachments to the end. It's just a link, and the link says that I don't have permission to access.
No, it's attached in the live agenda online on the city website.
Okay, give me a few moments.
Okay.
Okay, I can look on the live website in a few minutes.
Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes. Commissioner Gray.
I just wanted to say by way of discussion that I think it's a great idea that we submit this advice to the City Council. Individual City Council members have actually solicited additional advice on this issue. And while they asked for James Kemper to submit his suggestions, I know that the attached suggestions to this item were crowdsourced from the public mostly, and so I think they're probably a better reflection of what would best serve the RAB as opposed to the opinion of a sole administrator. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray.
I have 3 comments, input.
Okay.
I was
Commissioner Hilton.
Commissioner Hilton. I was invited and participated in the Santa Monica Resident Advisory Group. It was called Group back in 2006, so I have some familiarity. There were meetings. Among the 3 concerns is the first is that I agree we should invite all subsidized participants, for example, all 1,700, and not just the approximately 1,500 housing choice voucher clients. Other housing authorities, such as LA City Housing Authority, does the same. And the second item I'll bring up is my concern about what is called 4 resident advisory board meetings for the year. I think that may be too many all at once. Usually there's not a lot of discretionary changes regardless of the plan. And my final comment is before any letter or formal request to council, we'll need to consult with the Housing Authority administration or senior staff about the timeline for the public housing plans, because each plan occurs at a different time of the year. I'd rather that we tonight appoint a committee that looks into some of these matters and that we have perhaps a report next month.
Commissioner Hilton, can you give me more detail on what you would want a committee to do?
Well, I've given some examples.
Oh, sorry.
Well, for example, in the first paragraph, it says that the first RAB meeting, quote, to occur within 30 days of the date of the letter. So is that 30 days from the date of the letter to council? Because you have to notify the subsidy participants and give them sufficient time, for example, to attend and participate.
Right, exactly. Yes, and it would be 30 days from the date of the letter. And the idea was to, because I'm the one who is sponsoring this, that I would assist staff in writing the letter to the 1,700 participants. So it shouldn't be something that takes a very long time and should be easy to send out by mail and by email. Commissioner Gray, you have comments?
Yes, I think because I know that this language was largely used when we discussed this general topic before. I agree with Commissioner Hilton that if this letter is going to the city council now instead of the previously proposed letter directly to the Housing Authority Executive Director, perhaps 30 days from the date of informing the city council is not enough time, because that still doesn't account for action on the Housing Authority's part. So maybe we don't want to stipulate that, or we want to change the length of time, because we don't know exactly how quickly the city council will act on it, right? I mean, we can request them. Do I understand that correctly? We can request that they have or recommend that the Housing Authority have the first meeting occur within 30 days of our advice, but that would also mean that that the letter would have to go out almost immediately to give recipients 30 days notice of the meeting, if you wanted to give them that much notice.
So then, Commissioner Hilton, what would you suggest? As
Well,
far as,
I suggest, I think what we need to do is pace it more, because and I think that the commissioner just clarified that. First, we make plans with the administration, and then we send a letter with commission approval and prior discussion to council.
Perhaps if we, this is Commissioner Gray, perhaps if we asked City Council, or we suggested to City Council that that the Housing Authority schedule the first RAB meeting to take place within 30 days from the date that City Council advises the Housing Authority on what they would like them to do. Does that make sense? So instead of 30 days from our letter to the City Council, it would be 30 days from the City Council's direction to the Housing Authority. And that gives the City Council wiggle room to process the advice.
this is Vice Chair Morosco. I agree with Commissioner Gray, her suggestion. That definitely makes more sense. So, and as far as you're saying, commission approved letter, the attachment is basically what the letter is going to state. That goes to City Council. So these are the requests that the Housing Commission would be making.
And why 4 meetings within the year? Is that too many?
Commissioner Hilton, that is just based on information that I've looked up of other resident advisory boards. Generally, they have quarterly meetings to discuss it's administrative plan and two, because we're talking about a group of people who probably don't even understand what an administrative or annual plan is. And for sure, within the first year, the RAB would need enough time to understand what their role is, what their responsibilities are, and for the Housing Authority to be able to provide information on the annual and administrative plans, so that anyone who participates understands what a discretionary change is and what is mandated, the difference between discretionary changes and what is mandated by HUD. So, and this is something that can be decided by the RAB at a later time, how many meetings they want to do a year. It should not be decided by the Housing Commission per se. I'm just proposing that 4 meetings be set up. We just at least need 1 meeting to get it started.
Well, that's my point, is I think we'd be more likely to meet our general goal and have success if we added flexibility, such as 2 to 4 meetings in the next year.
But I think that should be, Commissioner Hilton, I think that should be up to the RAB to decide and not the Housing Commission. I'm just proposing that 4 meetings be scheduled in advance with the assistance of the Santa Monica Housing Authority. Is we won't have their contact information, and it's not our job to decide when they have their meetings or how many meetings that they have. So I'm just proposing that it be 4 meetings. But right now, I'm just saying in general, at least one meeting needs to happen pretty immediately. And then the RAB can just decide from there how many meetings they think that they're going to need in the year.
Well, my experience is that the public housing staff, such as in LA City, LA County, they assist and facilitate, and it's not that the commission per se or the subsidized tenants that decide when the meetings take place, because there's location, there's certain budget. So I just think adding more flexibility, I don't see any harm in saying 2 to 4 meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. Commissioner Gray, you have comments?
Yes, I think that in this case, because the Housing Authority has actively obstructed the functioning of the meaningful functioning of a resident advisory board for what I understand is decades now, that it's not appropriate to give them a range, which based on their prior behavior, they would opt to do the minimum of whatever's suggested. I agree with you, Vice Chair Marasco, that the RAB should be determining for themselves. It's meant to be an independent body. They should be determining for themselves how frequently they want to meet. But I think asking for 4 meetings initially should be enough time for the RAB to decide amongst themselves what their responsibilities will be, opportunity for some education because these are complex documents, and probably everything won't be done, even discussions of, an administrative plan, for example, won't necessarily be completed in a single meeting. So I think 4 meetings is an appropriate number of meetings for a newly formed resident body, that the individuals for the most part, don't have experience with these documents and these matters. I think that's an appropriate number of meetings for them to have to get themselves situated. And if in our advice we recommend less than 4 meetings, it seems unlikely that that they would be granted more than 2. If we said 2 to 4, it's more likely that they would only be granted 2. I think that the Housing Authority, our advice to the City Council, I think, requires advising a higher standard for the Housing Authority to give the RAB the best opportunity to launch successfully and work.
Commissioner Camner, were you able to locate the attachment?
Yes, I reviewed the attachment. Thank you.
Okay, great. So Commissioner Gray did second my motion, and so now we will go to, if there's no further discussion, we will go to roll call vote. So Commissioner Camner?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner DeBaca?
I apologize. Can you please repeat that before I vote on it? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. So I move to provide the attached guidance from the Housing Commission to the Santa Monica Housing Authority Board in the form of a letter and possible in-person delivery at a future Santa Monica Housing Authority Board meeting as advice.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Gomez?
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gray? Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamilton? Commissioner Hamilton? Did I lose Commissioner Hamilton? Okay, I'll come back to Commissioner Hamilton. Okay, Commissioner Hilton?
Abstain.
Commissioner Hamilton, are you there? I see he's still on. Not sure where. And the vice chair votes yes. And I don't know what happened to Commissioner Hamilton, but that is 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and I guess no vote from Commissioner Hamilton. So the motion passes. Now we will move on to item 9C, discussion and possible action on inviting a 100% affordable housing provider to discuss reasonable accommodation modifications at a future meeting. And as stated before, Commissioner Gomez, you said you were working with this with Commissioner Hilton.
Correct, Vice Chairman Marasco.
So
I'll defer.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so you'll defer to Commissioner Hilton?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I think I was doing this backwards. Maybe the public comments should come after the presentation, so I apologize. So Commissioner Hilton, if you want to go ahead on item 9C, please.
I made an inquiry to CCSM, one of our more prominent housing developers, and the executive director agreed to attend to a future meeting. She did send correspondence dated April 28th, and she'll be discussing, she's been agreeable to discuss the community concerns, how to locate a unit, the number of accessible units in her inventory. And one of the things we should address, I think, is also such things as disclosure. In other words, when residents lease up, are they informed about the availability of the units? Is there some kind of written disclosure? And that protects both the developer and the city. So at any rate, she said she would be more than delighted to come and participate. And I think the most appropriate meeting would be to include the chair and vice chair of the Disabilities Commission.
Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hilton, is that the end of your presentation of this item?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'd like to open this up for public comment. Are there any public comments regarding item 9C, discussion and possible action on inviting a 100% affordable housing provider to discuss reasonable accommodations, modifications at a future meeting?
Possibly, I would like to comment. I'm not sure if I understood correctly. This is about inviting the executive director of CCSM.
Commissioner Hilton?
It can be just the CCSM, or we could ask for example, for another city contract developer to also participate, because it applies to all of our trust fund recipients.
Yes, my only comment is that I would very much like to hear from the executive director of CCSM, as it's a housing provider that's notorious for violating the ADA and harassing people who request reasonable accommodation. So I would love to hear from her. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zaraska. Are there any other?
This is Denise Martin. I would also like to say that I've had experience with CCSM that was not, as a disabled person, not to my benefit. And I question, once again, due to previous reports from CCSM people, or that have lived in their developments, once again of not proper upkeep resulting in treacherous conditions for people that are disabled. So I don't know if this is the organization to speak on reasonable accommodations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Are there any other public comments regarding item 9C? Okay. So is there a motion on this item? I'm sorry, Commissioner Gray?
I don't understand the item. What Commissioner Hilton described is not reflected in the description of the item. It says discussion and possible action on inviting a 100% affordable housing provider to discuss reasonable accommodations / modifications at a future meeting. I don't understand exactly what that entails, and I don't know what the goal of that would be.
Well, I've addressed that earlier in the meeting, throughout the meeting, that there's been community concerns in the disability community that persons with mobility, vision, hearing are aware apparently of this requirement, but they can't access the unit. So they can't locate the unit. They've had difficulty finding the units. So the intent would be to have the chair, vice chair of the Disabilities Commission, who know about disability and disability needs, and to include, of course, a housing provider at the same meeting to discuss possible clarification and improvements.
I guess I understand the rationale behind discussing reasonable accommodations and modifications with Disabilities Commission members. I don't understand why CCSM would be invited.
Because our trust fund legal agreement with the nonprofits requires 15% or at least 15% interior modifications in each development. So every time Community Corps or another nonprofit gets a city loan, they're required to provide these units. There's a question about whether these units are available and how to locate the units for those who have disability need.
Commissioner Gray?
Sorry. So does it seem that they're not following that clause in their contract? Is that, do we want to ask them here to ask them about that?
Well, one of the problems is that item 12 in the legal agreement, and all it states is in one simple sentence that the 15% is a requirement. So it doesn't discuss, for example, disclosure to the lease-up tenant. It doesn't discuss whether these units are available later during tenancy. So these are some questions we'd want to ask, for example, to make improvements.
Okay, so it's not really reasonable accommodations necessarily. It's discussing their contractual obligation to have 15%. Was it 15% accessible units?
Yes, I think this came about because there was an LA City lawsuit, $200 million, because affordable housing development in LA City was taking government funding and not providing this type of accessibility requirement. So the State Housing and Community Development, as I recall, put out a directive that any government funding provide these accessible units.
Okay, so do I understand correctly that the purpose of this meeting would be to ensure CCSM is being held accountable for their obligations?
Well, also to maybe suggest improvements, because when you ask a question about it, the typical response is there's privacy laws, and there's such a thing as keeping inventory of the interior modification without naming a tenant, but also providing information to a tenant when they're applying to rent a unit, so that they know that these units are available. If they don't know the unit is available and it's no out-of-pocket cost, they're not likely to ask for the accessibility. That's a requirement by the city legal agreement.
Is Commissioner Hilton, is this does this contractual obligation apply to any other entities that we know of in the city, or is it primarily CCSM?
No, we don't. For example, the city require it in AHPP. So when there's a zoning requirement and a lesser number of affordable units, because there's no city funding, we don't require it. So we require it when there's a city loan. So it could be to a senior housing provider, family housing provider, and that's when the requirement is imposed. And it's number 12, as I recall, in the city's legal agreement between the city and trust fund and the nonprofit.
Right, I understand that. I'm just asking if right now CCSM is the major organization that this applies to right now in Santa Monica. There aren't other nonprofits that we know of that
yes,
receive
we
the same
have
kind.
other nonprofits. So we have EAH Housing. They have senior housing in Santa Monica. They have a brand new building. It applies to them. It applies to any nonprofit that gets city funding, meaning the 15% interior unit requirement. So it's 15% of the total number of units have to have either mobility, vision, and or hearing modifications. And it doesn't mean they have 15%, but it means it's available. So disclosure is a very important factor, and I don't think they currently do it. It's not a requirement.
Thank you for explaining that. It seems to me then that perhaps in addition to CCSM, we might want to invite the other nonprofits that this applies to so we can have the same discussion with them.
I agree.
Do you have a sense, is this, on the order of 5 nonprofits, 50? I mean, is it a manageable number that we could try and get a representative from each of them to join us at a meeting?
We probably could invite EAH. We don't have a diverse number of nonprofits, so primarily it's Community Corps, but I definitely agree we should invite some other nonprofit to attend the meeting.
This is Vice Chair Marasco. I would also suggest, I'm muted. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You
I
seem
said
to
I
be
was
muted.
muted.
Your icon, but I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. May I suggest that you also invite the Santa Monica Housing Authority to ask questions and to get some answers regarding this? I mean, just because there's such a lack of diversity, and really the Santa Monica Housing Authority, is involved in that contract. So I think it would be helpful if they also attended that same meeting.
This is Commissioner Gray.
Well, the housing authority is different. they issue the federal subsidy, and we have another program where the tenant themselves can apply to a grant and do the interior modifications on their own. But this is specific to the Housing Trust Fund and the legal agreement between the city and the nonprofit. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the federal voucher.
Or shall I say, wherever they're getting the funding from, we should invite wherever the nonprofits, if it's the housing division or whoever's providing the funding for this, then maybe we should invite someone from that department. Commissioner Gray?
I agree with you, and I wanted to add along the same lines that I thought, given this is a contractual obligation, and none of us, to my knowledge, are legal experts, that we endeavor to have someone from the city attorney's office join us for that meeting to answer any legal questions that come up, so we don't derail a conversation for want of a simple piece of information. But I think it goes in line with what you're saying, Vice Chair Marasco, about having someone on the end of the contract creator represented to discuss its contents.
Yeah.
But I think that there should also be, or it should be one person, or there should be an additional person who can speak as a legal authority if needed.
Like the consumer, I'm sorry, this is Vice Chair Marasco, such as the Consumer Protection Unit, possibly.
Exactly. And this is Commissioner Gray again. I agree with Commissioner Hilton that this seems like a perfect thing to meld with the ADA coordinator and the Disabilities Commission members, representatives. If that could all happen together, it would be nice to bring those diverse viewpoints from on the same subject to the table to discuss this together.
Is there any further?
As far as the federal Section 8 voucher, there's ADA compliance requirements for all buildings, such as building accessibility in and out of the building, and there's a requirement for accessibility inside a building. I don't think there's any financial obligation on the part of the property owner to provide interior accessibility or modification, and that's actually in my handout from that 2010 meeting, that interior modifications are usually a financial cost and therefore a responsibility of the individual tenant. But when the city provides funding, such as for construction of the development, then there's this new requirement of 15% of the units have to have interior modifications based on need. So it may be less than 15%, but there's also the question about an existing tenant who may need the modification when it's under the 15%, for example.
Interesting.
So would it be appropriate to move that we, sorry, let me pull up the agenda so I get the wording correct. I think I will move that we invite at least 3 of the qualifying nonprofits mentioned, not necessarily those mentioned, but that fit that category of contractual obligation. I move that we invite at least 3 of those housing providers to discuss these contractual obligations related to the 15% accessibility requirement.
And this is Vice Chair Marasco. I would make a friendly amendment or add that we invite either the housing division or someone from the consumer protection unit or someone else from the city attorney's office who can explain this from a legal standpoint
Thank
and
you
the
for that.
contractual obligations of these contracts.
And I would add to the motion that all of this is done with the intention of creating recommendations for the city council or whoever the appropriate receiving body would be for them to update the language in future contracts to make things like notification requirements in addition to just the existence of these factors.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gray, you're stating that that's the goal?
Well, Commissioner Hilton said that that the contractual obligation is for the conditions themselves to be met, but not necessarily for them to be advertised to people who would benefit from them. So disclosure, other kinds of notices. And so it seems like the opportunity for the Housing Commission is to have this conversation with them, find out what they are and aren't doing, find out, more details about how all of this works, and then we can give advice we can use that to advise the creator of those contracts that we would like to update those contractual obligations to a higher standard to include things like notification.
Okay, so just for, this is Vice Chair Marosco again, just for clarification, can you please restate this motion as brief as possible?
Yes, I move that we invite to a future Housing Commission meeting a minimum of 3 affordable housing providers subject to these contractual obligations, in addition to a legal representative from the city and, if necessary, a separate representative from the housing division who can speak to these issues, with the goal of increasing the visibility of these accommodations to consumers who would use them.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item?
I think you're expecting too much in one meeting or preparation for the meeting, because we may not be able to get 3 affordable housing providers, but also the time to discuss a letter and advice to council is when we have the meeting. In other words, you have the discussion and it's a possible action item.
Yes, no, I understand that. I don't think that's inconsistent with what I said.
Commissioner Hilton, would you like to I'm not sure where we go from here. Is there a second for Commissioner Gray's motion? Oh, I'm sorry.
I second. This is Tabaka.
I'm sorry. I need to go to public comment. My apologies. Before we go forward on seconding, if we could do public comment on this.
Did we not already? I thought we already did public comment on this.
I actually stated at the beginning of it that I was doing it backwards.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry.
I'd like to comment on it if you don't mind.
Yes, David Morris, go ahead.
I'd like to tell you a story about a young man who is immobile from the waist down, who actually by CCSM was evicted from his reasonable accommodation unit that was built for him by CCSM. And because of the eviction, he was actually sued by CCSM and is presently paying off a bill to repay for the actual modifications that were made to that unit. Because of this, this young man became homeless for a number of years. He's seriously handicapped. He attended the Housing Commission numerous times with his mother and pleaded with the Housing Authority to assist him in this venture, not only to get a reasonable accommodation unit, but to actually to get rehoused. Recently, this man he finally got housed after about 2.5, 3 years, but not in a reasonable accommodation unit. But recently he was told by the people concerned, who is the people handling his case management, that they had found him a reasonable accommodation unit. So he was taken to a building on the corner of Broadway and Lincoln, where they have the smallest units, I think, in the whole city for apartments. And when he got there, he was told that there was no reasonable accommodation unit there, that the people concerned had misled him. There never was a reasonable accommodation unit available. And this is what goes on in the city. But what I found out in this whole adventure of this young man, which I witnessed for a number of years, and I'm a friend to him, one in the manner of seeking an associate. This young man has so much trouble with the city trying to get a unit. After getting kicked out of a unit, he went to school here in Santa Monica, Santa Monica resident from his early youth, got no help from Barbara Collins, got no help from the Housing Commission, got no help from the Disabilities Commission, got no help from the council. And it took 3 years to get this handicapped individual who's severely handicapped, not just a little bit, but severely handicapped, to get a unit just to live in at all, while he's paying off his debt to CCSM for the modifications to the unit that they evicted him from. So he finally finds a unit, he's told by the people concerned, which raises issues about the people concerned, the way they do business. He goes there, and there never was a unit for him to view. But one of the issues that I'm bringing up right now is they told him that, they can rent this modified unit to anybody. So it's first come, first serve. Whoever comes to get a unit, if it's a modified unit and it's a tenant that wants an apartment, they can get that. I think this is a big problem in the city, for a city that has a number of seniors and seriously handicapped people, that the units are actually being rented out from under them, and they really don't have an opportunity to get to these units at all. And I've witnessed numerous cases of people dealing with the people concerned, Santa Monica Housing Authority, Santa Monica Housing Commission, Santa Monica Disabilities Commission, the city manager, the former homeless liaison, or czar, homeless czar that they used to have here in the city of Santa Monica. And none of these people have been able to accommodate these handicapped people. We have to come up with a solution to where there are apartments available for the handicapped people. They can't just build these apartments with reasonable accommodation, but they never get to the handicap. That's insane. I thought I'd share this story about this young man to you, to let you know the struggles that he went through and is still going through, trying to find a modified unit after 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, David Morris. Is there any further public comment on this item? Okay. Is there a second on Commissioner Gray's motion to invite at least 3 affordable, 100% affordable housing providers and someone from the city attorney's office to attend a future meeting? Okay, I will second Commissioner Gray's motion. And now we'll go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Camner,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca, Commissioner DeBaca, Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Hilton,
Yes.
and the Vice Chair votes yes. One more time, Commissioner DeBaca, Commissioner Hamilton. Okay, there are 5 votes yes, and 2 absent votes. Therefore, the motion passes. Now we'll move to item 9E, discussion and possible action regarding Mark Verville as future speaker. And Commissioner Gray, I will turn this item over to you to discuss.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marasco. This is a simple one. I would just like to invite Santa Monica resident Mark Verville to speak at a future Housing Commission meeting regarding housing costs. He's a retired finance professional and a member of the Santa Monica, the SMART group, and he's published articles on their behalf concerning housing and housing costs. He is vice chair of the Santa Monica Audit Subcommittee, but his presentation would be about his own personal work, not related to the Audit Subcommittee's work. He's done extensive research and study on his own concerning housing finance and housing costs in Santa Monica. And so I'd like to have him here so we can discuss that with him.
Okay, and I'd like to open this up to public comment on item 9E. Is there anyone who would like to comment?
This is Olga Zaraska. I would very much be interested in hearing this presentation by Mark Verville. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Zaraska. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment on 9E? Okay, if there's no further public comment, I would like to open this up for discussion with commissioners.
This is Commissioner Camner.
Yes, Commissioner Camner.
I strongly object to this. For a long time, I have been, seeking to invite experts to speak on housing costs to this commission. Of course, most of you were not at these previous meetings, but that was never allowed. And I'm talking about like academic professors that I would like to invite to speak on this issue. I asked for this issue to be in the work plan, and I don't think that there was an explanation for why it wasn't put in the work plan, or why I wasn't allowed to participate in something like that. And then to invite somebody with a particular political viewpoint, like Mark Verville, that is not an academic expert, but a retired finance professional, and like very active politically in in our community on political issues around housing. Like, I would be extremely concerned about that, and I think it would further demonstrate that this commission is trying to advance a particular political viewpoint while silencing minority viewpoints on this issue. So I object to this, and I think this should not go forward. And if it were to, then I think that other viewpoints should also be represented and invited.
Commissioner Gray?
Thank you. Commissioner Kamner, can you elaborate for me? I'm not familiar with a particular political housing bent of Mark Verville that would make him inappropriate to speak with us. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, find specific examples and highlight them for you all, so I can do that right now if you would like. But the viewpoint is that housing supply is not relevant to housing costs, that there's overproduction of housing, that we don't need to plan for more housing. And, so I think that is the particular viewpoint.
To be clear, I don't want to invite him for his advice on city planning or on housing planning. I wanted to invite him specifically to discuss housing costs and more specifically rental housing costs in Santa Monica, which he's done, from what I understand, a very thorough study of. And in part, I wanted to do that because we, as a couple other people have mentioned, we have FMR issues, fair market rate issues with the Housing Authority in terms of their payment standards. And also, I think it would be good for us to be more up to date on recent dramatic changes, trends in rent. But given that I specifically don't want to invite him for his input on city planning, but just on the finance of rental costs in Santa Monica, does that change your position at all?
I think that he has a particular viewpoint on the causes of rental costs, high rental costs in the city. And so I think that I would be concerned about inviting him and demonstrating that particular viewpoint, that this commission agrees with that viewpoint without hearing other viewpoints. And I think it would be better to invite an academic expert on this issue anyway.
Do you have a recommendation for someone who might balance out the perspectives represented in such a meeting?
Yes, I definitely can think of potential speakers on this.
Would you like to offer any of them now?
I mean, let me think through it a little bit, but I mean, I would just invite somebody from UCLA that's published data on this, or USC, or like a research institution that's published data on research costs. But I need to look up specifically who would be invited.
Okay. My concern is that his focus has been, I guess one of the reasons that I'm so interested in hearing from him is that he's done a focus specifically on California and Santa Monica in particular, and that this is all current data. Even HUD right now doesn't have accurate FMR charts for the area, and so I wanted current numbers that that we could be apprised of.
Can I ask, what was the process for choosing Mark Verville specifically? Did we research and brainstorm all the potential experts that have published on this topic, or how was he specifically identified?
I saw one of his in-depth presentations to another, I believe, city body on detailed financial issues related to Santa Monica housing, and I thought it was instructive and information that wasn't easily obtained elsewhere. And I thought that it would be really suitable for the Housing Commission to hear what he had to say and be able to ask him questions about his research.
Has he been published in any peer-reviewed publications?
I have no idea. But again, my interest was based on the work that he did present, I wasn't putting him forth as an expert per se, but as someone who is informed on the current state of this issue that could offer some meaningful information that he seems to have documented well all the sources of. But he seems to have collated all that information himself. It wasn't easily obtainable otherwise.
If I could make a suggestion, I think like we should identify the topic that we would like a presentation about and like the data that we'd like a presentation about, and then research experts who have, peer-reviewed publications relevant to that topic and data, and then narrow it down there and not like seek out a particular person with a particular viewpoint that, is like very active already in this community politically.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. We're kind of getting into a back and forth on this. I wanted to see if any of the other commissioners had anything that they wanted to add.
This is Commissioner Gomez. I've seen some of Mr. Verville's work. I think it's very, so two observations. It's A, thought-provoking, and B, very unique in terms of its focus on Santa Monica, consistent with what Commissioner Gray had to say. If it isn't aligned with our philosophical or professional beliefs, that should not, I think, inhibit us from wanting to hear about his work. Diversity of thought is very, very powerful, especially, again, if it's not consistent with our profession or our beliefs. That being said, I also happen to think that there are many academicians that are incredibly compromised because of the funding that they get from special interests. And consequently, we want diversity of thought. And as opposed to not wanting to hear someone whose position we don't like, that we're trying to categorize or paint as political, we should look at two different viewpoints, perhaps. One of an academician that is potentially tainted by an industry, and someone who, Mr. Verville has no financial interest in whatever it is he's published. I believe he's just like us. He's concerned about Santa Monica and wants to make it a better place, and wants to promote equitable housing just like we do. I'll just cut to the chase here. I'm supportive of what Commissioner Gray has proposed here. And if we want to bring in someone that has a different viewpoint, we should do that too. But I think limiting ourselves to someone who we want to hear or that's consistent with our profession is not in the best interest of the people we're trying to serve here. That's my view.
Are there any other commissioners that want to add to the discussion? Thank you, Commissioner Gomez.
I just like
Public
to.
comment? Hilton.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Hilton, go ahead.
I assume 9E was a budget-related item. There was an initial and a revised 9E. The initial wording last week named the person and his title, and the revision retained the individual's name but deleted reference to the audit committee. I think if the topic was housing authority versus housing division budget, and this individual should know the details, I think it would be very valuable if you're going to include, and it didn't seem like you were, the proposed, and I emphasize proposed 5% real estate transfer tax on 8 million plus sales. I think we should have an alternate or at least two speakers. But I too am concerned about inviting one city committee official to speak about such a generality as housing costs. And I'm concerned about the political perception.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you have any input on this item? Commissioner DeBaca?
I think we should have him. He has the latest numbers. I want to hear from him.
Commissioner Hamilton? Okay, is there a motion on the table, or do you want to make a motion, Commissioner Gray?
I'd like to make a clarification and a motion. I want to clarify that that the title was there in error. It was my error, and that when I'm speaking of inviting Mark Verville to a housing commission meeting, I'm explicitly inviting him as a private individual and not as a representative of any city board or commission. So that's one. Two, I move that we invite Mark Verville to a future housing commission meeting with room in the meeting that he attends for an additional speaker that I welcome Commissioner Kamner or someone else to propose, or that the alternate speaker can follow Mark Verville at the subsequent meeting, just depending on how the logistics work out. But I propose that we invite Mark Verville to a future housing commission meeting to discuss housing costs, specifically rental costs in Santa Monica, and leave room for his appearance to be partnered with or offset by another speaker.
Hi, I have public comment before we get to that motion, please.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
I have public comment. I tried to get public comment earlier, but you moved on super fast from the public comment session.
Okay, I'm very sorry. Who's speaking?
My name is Jason Massbaum.
Okay, Jason Massbaum, go ahead.
So I'm also strongly opposed to inviting Mark Verville to speak to your commission. In his capacity as a private citizen, Commissioner Gomez said, "Oh, academics are financially compromised too," but the SMART group is a group of homeowners who go out of their way to enrich their own self-interest of limiting housing production in Santa Monica, which has a clear financial interest for increasing their own housing costs. I've seen his attempts to deal with housing issues, and flatly, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He makes stuff up, right? There was a state audit on the housing element process, on the RENA process, where he clearly didn't understand what he was reading. And just time and again, I've seen him just make things up to fit his agenda. So again, not in So his private personal agenda, like you should be seeking qualified experts, not cranks like Mark Verville. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason Maspam.
I would like to second the motion on the table.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner DeBaca. And now we'll go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Camner?
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment
Okay, I'm
that
sorry.
in addition to discussing and bringing information on housing costs, that it should include housing authority versus housing division budget.
Commissioner Gray?
Thank you. I think that that sounds like it's going quite far afield from the original topic that we wanted him to speak on. It sounds like that would be him speaking as a representative of the audit subcommittee. Do I understand that correctly?
Well, you said, or the commission generally referred to that he wasn't speaking for the audit committee, but he has the numbers. He has the budgets on the housing authority and separately the housing division.
Is that something perhaps, Commissioner Hilton, that you'd like to agendize separately? If that's a subject that you want to take a look at? I'm not sure how closely that ties in with the proposed topic.
Well, I too agree with the public comment that there's a political the columns are political, and it's not that I disagree with the columns, but I just think that if someone's coming with the expertise of city budget that this individual has, that it would be valuable to bring data and budgets about the housing authority and housing division, because frequently they're combined or there's confusion.
If I may, Commissioner Hilton, I agree with you about the importance of seeing that information. I think that the relationship and lack of clarity of division between the housing department and the housing authority is a very important subject that I wouldn't want overshadowed by a larger discussion of something else. So I would love to see that agendized as its own item for us to get into the details about the relationship between the housing authority and the housing division. But I don't think that the best place for that is this particular invite.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to continue to get into these back and forth discussions. We already have a motion on the table with a second, and I would like to go to a roll call vote. So if we can go forward, Commissioner Camner.
Can I suggest an amendment to this? So I'm not clear if it's currently in the motion right now, but that another speaker be invited from a governmental agency, potentially if there's concern about, an academic, or I don't know, maybe we could discuss like an academic institution that people would be open to, but just like amending this motion to invite another speaker. And then also, if this commission is valuing diversity of viewpoint and diversity of opinion, then to also amend the work plan to include causes of high rental costs, as a part of the work plan. So that would be my requested amendment to this motion.
Commissioner Camner, I think that we would be creating a new work plan in July, and maybe that would be something that you could add to the work plan in July. But I do believe that Commissioner's Gray motion included keeping space for another speaker to, or to follow Mark Verville's presentation. Can you repeat the motion one more time, please, Commissioner Gray?
Yes, I move that we invite Mark Virgil to a future Housing Commission meeting to discuss specifically housing costs and rental costs in Santa Monica, and that we leave room for a speaker either to accompany him in the same meeting or to follow in the next meeting after that at their convenience. And I encourage Commissioner Kamner to provide suggestions for the other speaker.
This is
So we're gonna
Tabaka.
have it- I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I was just going to second it again. I apologize.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to say there is already a second on the table, so I would like, thank you, Commissioner Tabaka. I would like to go to a roll call vote now on Commissioner Gray's motion. Commissioner Kamner,
No.
Commissioner Tabaka,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez, Commissioner Gomez, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton,
No.
and the vice chair votes yes. So that is 5 yes votes and 2 no votes, and the motion passes. Now I will go to agenda item number 10, general public input.
Sorry,
Do we
before we
have-
move on, can I ask a question? So I just want to confirm I'm able to invite a speaker as well. I should go ahead and invite a speaker.
Commissioner Kamner and now Commissioner Gray.
I think it would, I'd like you to recommend a speaker rather than just inviting someone directly to, just to propose it to us. But yes, in general, I'd like you, since you're one of the people who objected to a particular viewpoint being represented, I would like to make sure that you feel there's a balance of perspective. So I'd like your input on who's invited, but I'd like to know who you're proposing before you invite them.
So I should send a suggestion to you, Commissioner Gray, or I should bring it to the next meeting.
I would think bring it to the next meeting.
Sorry, I'm just concerned about the timing of
I would offer up that we treat any recommendation like we did this one, and more specifically that we vote on it in a democratic fashion.
Okay. And so now going to general public input, do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on items not on the agenda?
Yes,
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
this is Olga Zuraska.
Hi, Ms. Zaraska, go ahead.
Yes, so I was actually hoping that this item would be moved to the top of the meeting. But we are here now. I can just comment about a previous instance where the commission was attempting to move the public input period to the beginning of the meeting. This was a few months ago, I think, the beginning of this year, and 2 commissioners, Commissioner Kamner and Hamilton, voted no. Apparently in hopes of discouraging critical public comments about their service on the commission, since they have a conflict of interest, both of them. And now what happened is that despite the fact that the majority of the votes were for the public comment to be moved up, then Chair Hilton announced that the motion did not pass. And when I was finally allowed to offer public comment at the end of the meeting, I asked the question, how come the motion was announced to have failed despite the majority of the votes being for it? Then Chair Hilton stated that there was no quorum. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that that was not correct. And in reality, the current rules of order that pertain to agenda management say that, quote, the order may be changed by a majority vote of those present, end quote. So there was a majority of commissioners who voted to move the public comment to the top of the meeting, and yet that did not happen. Now, those rules of order were discussed by the Commission in November 2021 under item 3B, which was City Council mandated procedural changes. I would hope that from now on the Commission will know how to count the votes on this particular motion on agenda management. So that's number one, and I was tickled by what just transpired with the lobbyist on the Commission, Commissioner Kamner, attempting to silence one of the speakers who wanted to come and present, and the Commission wanted to invite. I think it's really important to make this observation that is also connected to a comment by Commissioner Hamilton that apparently he has been feeling uncomfortable since January of this year while participating in this Commission's meetings, and his discomfort. He was trying to imply that the discomfort comes from the fact that there are new commissioners and somehow maybe they don't know how to act as commissioners. I think it's important to point out that this is a political issue. Both the people with a conflict of interest on this commission, which is Commissioner Hamilton and Commissioner Kamner, they got very used to being in the majority and forcing their political agenda on this commission for a long time. And the political shift that occurred on this commission at the beginning of the year is uncomfortable for them, and they are now trying to make it look like it's some kind of a personal problem of the new commissioners, that they're to be faulted for their personal shortcomings or not being able to function as commissioners, which is not the case. So I just wanted to make sure that it's out there. I think that, I actually have suffered through a lot of the commission meetings in the past. I've been attending them since 2017, and I have suffered through multiple commission meetings where Commissioner Kamner would bring items, sometimes items that lasted for 3 commission meetings that were not even within the purview of the Housing Commission, specifically issues of some diversity, people from Oregon trying to, just create some lottery to pick people for public comments or whatever, really not a very wise idea. But anyway, so we suffered through that, and I think it's very interesting that now Commissioner Kamner is trying to obstruct certain people being invited to present at this commission obviously for political reasons, and I really hope it's one of the last meetings that we have to put up with Commissioner Kamner, as she's a lobbyist and has a conflict of interest and should have been booted from this commission a long time ago. But her two council members who are also conflicted with her, who have been supported through a PAC funded by Santa Monica Forward that Commissioner Kamner is on the steering committee of. Those council members prevented Commissioner Kamner from being booted from this commission. So let's just face it, that's the situation. And that's, I think, my main comment. And again, I object to Commissioner Kamner's presence and participation on this commission. She is a lobbyist, and both she herself and the organization she runs have been under investigation by the Fair Political Practices Commission for almost a year now. The investigation started in June 2021. Recently, Commissioner Kamner filed a completely unsubstantiated complaint about one of the past commission meetings where she claimed she was cut off, which is not the case. I think someone who lies blatantly should not be sitting on this commission. I think it may be time to have an ethics code for commissioners and council members in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Saraska. Are there any other callers for general public comment?
I have a question. Is
this Denise Barton?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Denise Barton, go ahead.
Okay. If Ms. Kamner wants to have someone come as an alternate speaker, Are they two going to be focused specifically on the area of Santa Monica? Or are they going to be, LA, and those areas? Because I mean, Mr. Verville seems to want to focus mainly on Santa Monica. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barton. Are there any other speakers for public comment, general public comment? Commissioner Gray?
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. Am I allowed to say something relating to something that was just said in public comment?
It's my understanding that commissioners cannot comment on public comment. If I'm wrong, if somebody could please state one way or the other.
Commissioner Hamilton?
I think you can. Well, let me just. I believe you can make a comment on public comment. I think it's. I mean, I think it's allowed. Let's put it that way. I've seen other commissioners and other commissions respond.
Okay, I wanted to say that was a good point by Ms. Barton, and I just wanted to ask Commissioner Kamner, when you're looking at speakers to come, I hope you'll look at people who can speak specifically to Santa Monica, because that would be helpful. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray, and Commissioner Hamilton for clarifying. And are there any other people from the public that care to give their input to general public input? No one else from the public wants to give their input, and therefore this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you to the public.